This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Happy post-election weekend. Shane, are you a little bit excited that it's finally over?
It's only just begun, but yes, I'm excited the election is over, that's for sure, especially given the outcome.
Yes, absolutely. As many people know, we are a weekly, proudly progressive show, and our normal catchline is to provide you information to think before your vote. I think we may need to change that this week to provide you information to help you fight for great causes over the next 4 years.
Because a lot of people thought really long and hard and well and voted awesome.
Yes, they did.
Mandate.
Damn it. Yes.
I don't care.
And we're not talking about gay marriage.
I don't think Boner gets it that there was no mandate for the House.
No, they don't. As usual, we have some great news stories we want to share with you this morning. First up, and this is just awesome, Talking Points memo reports that the two Republican quote-unquote tests for voting fraud, yeah, they wound up in custody. How about that? Two Republicans in separate states were taken into police custody during the past week because of committing or allegedly committing voter fraud. In Nevada, 56-year-old Roxanne Rubin was arrested for apparently trying to vote twice. She was upset that they didn't ask for her ID the first time, so she went to another polling location and attempted to cast another vote.
She was going to prove that it happens all the time and the big fix was in.
Exactly.
Was there a videographer behind her?
Instead, she proved that the system works.
Yeah.
Yes. And
I mean, I don't like anyone getting. The thing is that you have a right wing media that's goading these people into saying over and over and over again that this happens all the time.
Yes.
This happens, and so they get so riled. People would get. I don't know this person's background, obviously, but they're convinced it could happen, and they're going to prove it. They're going to be the next. Who's the videographer? Quote unquote. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
The guy
James O'Keefe.
O'Keefe.
Yes.
You know, I'm going to be the next James O'Keefe.
Yes. And instead, they're in jail.
Yeah.
Another Republican, a poll watcher in New Mexico, whose name has not been released yet because the district attorney has not decided whether or not to press charges, but is also in police custody after attempting to vote twice. Apparently, this other gentleman voted once in the regular fashion and then openly submitted another provisional ballot and just wanted to see if, in fact, the system worked. Well, guess what, buddy? It works so well, I hope you're enjoying your stay in jail. And in other insane Republican news, something many people in Florida are happy and not surprised about. Representative Allen West lost officially to Democratic challenger Patrick Murphy. The big story there, however, is that Mr. West refuses to concede. Although Patrick Murphy's lead was close, about 2,442 votes, it's beyond the half-point margin needed to trigger an automatic recount.
So, but the thing is he going to go to the courts?
He's already tried to go to the courts.
What did the courts say?
The courts refused to ask for a recount because it's not within the margin of where a recount is mandatory.
But that's just not fair.
Well,
no, I'm being sarcastic, obviously.
There are a lot of ballots outstanding, specifically overseas, out-of-state, and military ballots. Hence, Allen's refusal to concede. But the recount legislation about whether or not it's authorized and mandatory is based on Saturday's vote count.
Right, but are they going to? I hope that they're going to be counting those provisional ballots, overseas ballots, etc.
I believe they will eventually count them. There are some unanswered questions.
Because, I don't care. It doesn't, voting, every ballot should count. I don't care if it turns out that he is on top. I mean, I would be upset, sad to have him back in Congress. But if more people voted for him, I don't care if it was provisionally. I don't care if it was overseas. If it's a valid vote, it should count. And if he has more votes, he should be in Congress. If he doesn't, he shouldn't.
As much as I wish I could disagree, I don't. I do agree that if he actually got more votes, he should have the election. But I'm guessing that in a state like Florida, which tends to fight tooth and nail for any Republican representative that they can get, that if this was a possibility, Rick Scott and fellow Republicans in the state would be screaming as well. And so, it was actually the country's most expensive House race.
Really?
If you can believe that. The pair raised nearly $21 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
For a House seat.
For a House seat.
Does that include Super PAC money or no?
It doesn't stay in this article. This is a Herald Tribune. The Herald Tribune. So this is the local paper down there. But in West Palm Beach, yes, Allen West refuses to concede. Perhaps if he can't put somebody's head in a barrel and mock execute them, he believes he hasn't won yet.
I can see him showing up for Congress in January.
Well,
after the lame duck session and saying, "I'm here."
Yeah, swear me in.
Oh boy.
Well, in that race and so many others around the country, we saw Republicans attempt to restrict voting for so many individuals. Of course, most affected were young voters, African Americans, and Hispanics. However, Ari Berman on Truth Out.
He's a smart guy.
He's a smart guy. And he has a great article, when was this, Friday, about how the GOP's war on voting backfired. Now, Shane, this was a theory you had
way
early on.
Back.
Yeah, about what the result of all these voting restrictions was going to be.
And it was just a theory. I'm glad to see the statistics back it up. But, wow, was it maybe a month ago?
Yes.
We're talking, and it seemed, and this was when early voting started up, and when, you've got a month in Ohio and people are camping out the night before for the first day of early voting. It occurred to me that there's the social psychology of membership to a group. The harder it is to get into a group, the more someone wants to be in that group. Think about the Marines, the few, the proud, the Marines, or a fraternity. You go through all that hazing. You have to go. The more you have to go through, the more you literally have to suffer, the more you want to be part of that group. It's social psychology. And when you tell somebody you can't have something, they tend to want it more.
Exactly.
And that's what they did with the vote.
Yes.
I firmly believe this.
Although 10 major restrictive voting laws were blocked in court over the past year, many were passed. Voter ID laws, cutting early voting, just a whole multitude of ways to disenfranchise voters. However, Black and Hispanic voter turnout actually increased as a share of the electorate relative to 2008.
Now, did the populations also increase? Oh, you said as a share. I'm sorry.
As a share. As a
Okay.
share. I think this could partly be, as you say, Shane, people being really pissed off that their voting rights were challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this could also be that Republicans' own war on voting rights also limited the number of their own constituents that turned out.
Sure, it can, because they tried the best they could to use a bit of a scalpel in terms of how they did it. Ohio was blatant about this.
Yes.
The Republican counties could have early voting, but the Democratic counties couldn't. So they tried that. But no matter what, you're going to have unintended, because it really is a socioeconomic situation.
Exactly.
And there are people who are Republicans who also are in the low parts of the socioeconomic strata. And so they would have difficulty too, because the cost, the time of getting those IDs, of figuring out all that, and taking the time off of work, all those things can also work against a Republican voter.
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't matter which way you vote, how much money you make, or what color your skin is. Many people don't have the opportunity, the desire, or the ability to stand in a 7, 8, 9-hour line waiting to vote.
I agree.
Yes.
I would like to see, and there's been a lot of talk of this, and we talked about it last weekend, that those long lines are voter suppression. And it's gone even further to say it's a poll tax.
Yes, because time is money.
Now, it is, you could bring a lawsuit as one of those people who stayed in that line for civil rights violations and make it, I don't know if civil rights can be a class action suit, but you could also have a civil suit for the time lost from work.
Yeah, that's what I was just
And then
thinking.
have a class action lawsuit. And you could, this is a real case in controversy where someone was actually injured. And
well,
any
people
voter
fainted. I mean, people were physically impaired by standing in
those
line.
are injuries. Those are injuries outside of what would be a class action, but just the length. That is a reasonable class action lawsuit to bring. I would be interested to see if anybody does that.
I would support such a class action, regardless
And you'd have
of
to do it
which
again.
way those people wanted to vote.
The
They
issue
should not-
issue is not about who you vote for; it's how difficult it is to vote.
Right, and they should not be subjected to such horrible situations because they want to be a part of the democratic process.
Right.
That's just absurd.
And now there are calls for voting machines per capita per person.
Yeah,
we've seen
as there should be.
going around. So,
Absolutely. Ari Berman.
just because we won doesn't mean voter suppression isn't going to continue. We're going to talk about that a little bit more later.
Yeah, and we'll be watching it throughout the next 4 years because the
They're gonna
changes
start early.
that they want to try and make could really impact the way elections turn for all elections to come.
And you know, it's kind of like a football game. You never want a football game to be decided by the refs.
Right.
This is way more important, obviously, than any football game. Do you really want an election to turn on the rules every single time? The House did.
Well, but as your theory panned out, and people were very upset that their voting rights were being challenged, Ari Berman, in reporting for this article, just to read his quote here because it's really interesting, he says, I spent the weekend before the election in black churches in Cleveland, and there's no doubt in my mind that the GOP's push to curtail the rights of black voters made them even more motivated to cast a ballot. Reverend Tony Minor, the Ohio coordinator of African American Ministries Leadership Council, was quoted, when they went after Big Mama's voting rights, they made us all mad. So I love the way he puts it, but it's simply true. You know, the same thing happened with the Latino vote. They increased the share of the electorate from 9% to 10%. And the increases in the share of the electorate were most dramatic in the swing states and the states that most tried to block people from the polls.
There you have it. That is your scientific, you know, cause and effect. If it gone up across the country at an equal amount,
right?
Then, but if there was a substantial difference between the states in which there was concerted efforts to block that vote, if it went up that much higher, then you can draw a reasonable conclusion that it was due to.
In Ohio, the portion of the black electorate increased 4%. In Florida, Latino vote increased 3%. In Nevada, it increased 4%.
Now, do we have a comparison to someplace like Tennessee?
Well, they mentioned Colorado up only 1%.
There you go. Well, Colorado did try a little bit.
But not to the same level of
Hoosted.
Yeah, hoosted. So
Tin roof. Hoosted.
I'm just very happy to see that Americans are way more determined than that. And you try and take away something that is so vital to their participation in the democracy, and they're going to fight like hell. And that fight is not going to go away.
This is really cynical, but why don't we try to take away everyone's voting rights?
Maybe
and then we'll be like
100%,
Australia.
yeah.
We'll be up to 98%.
Maybe we could get 100% turnout.
That would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
Not by those means, obviously.
Yes. But I'm happy to see that people were willing to fight, and thank you to everybody in those states that stood in those lines.
In every state.
Yes, but especially the 7, 8, 9-hour lines. That is a hero
To
in my
1
book.
and 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Down in Miami-Dade.
Absolutely. My
After
hat goes off
the
to them.
election had already been called, because people were aware that even in the middle of the night,
Things have a
Don
tendency to
Siegelman,
switch.
you know,
Yes.
ask up in Wisconsin with
It
Kathy
may
Nicholas.
be crazy for some people to think about it, but while Obama was giving his victory speech at 1:52 in the morning, people were still voting in Florida.
That's awesome.
That is dedication. Those people are heroes, and they deserve all of our admiration. In somewhat sad and concerning news, breaking news this morning, a very strong earthquake has struck northern Myanmar, a 6.8 magnitude earthquake, collapsing bridges, gold mine, and damaging, very old Buddhist pagodas, leaving as many as 12 people dead so far. And it was even followed by another 5.8 magnitude earthquake aftershock.
Any tsunami problem? Because that's,
they have not
Southeast Asia.
said that yet. This occurred at 7:42 a.m. local time. I'm not sure what the time difference is there, but there's nothing mentioned.
Probably in the 10-hour range, 10 to 12 hours.
Yeah,
almost.
there's nothing mentioned here so far about a tsunami warning or, thank God, the devastation. But Myanmar has a horrible disaster response record.
They have governments that flip constantly.
Exactly. In the devastating cyclone of 2008, as many as 140,000 people perished.
Holy wow.
Yeah. So hopefully they learned some lessons from that, and we see them really get their act together in this case. We definitely send our prayers and our thoughts to everybody there and hope that they are okay and that the fatalities don't increase. Wow, are we already up for a break?
We are.
Time flies when you're having fun. We have Allie, Watergate Summer on Twitter, of the 99 Report, coming up next to talk about our next news story, how people are dealing with the storm's aftermath here in New York and how the sick and frail in New York City are suffering the most in the storm's aftermath. Allie is on the ground there. She is with the New York City Medical Corps, and she is doing the Lord's work. We're going to talk to her about it next, hear about what's going on there and how we can help. So this is Talking Left on We Act Radio with me, Danielle and Shano. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Whoa! Awesome! Totally awesome! All right!
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shana.
Okay, astronaut, you're up. You'll be meeting with Wish Kid Brandon.
Roger, Brandon.
His wish is to see a space shuttle launch.
All systems are go. We are clear for liftoff.
This year, more than 27,000 children will be diagnosed with a life-threatening medical condition.
And, Cowboy,
Yes, ma'am.
you'll be meeting with Shayla at a dude ranch in San Antonio.
Let's saddle up.
Some will miss school, some will miss time with their family and friends.
Princess, are you here?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for rescuing me from that evil witch.
Juliana wishes for a princess-themed room makeover.
That sounds magical.
But with your help, the Make-A-Wish Foundation can lift their spirits and give them a special kind of hope.
Pirate,
Yar!
you're up for Isaac's wish.
Aye, aye, Captain.
The wishes of thousands of children are waiting to come true.
You can help make my wish happen. Visit wish.org today.
My name is Joe Thompson. I'm 29 years old and have a career that I love as a systems analyst. Career. It still sounds cool to say that word. I never could have gotten on this path without a college degree. And if the college me were here, he'd tell you.
I never would have gotten to college without Big Brothers Big Sisters. I could have ended up anywhere, on the streets even. But college? Joe Thompson? Not likely. My big brother helped me out. He taught me I could do anything, at a time when a lot of people were saying just the opposite.
And to a 7-year-old, that means a lot. My big brother's name is Phil. And Phil is the reason that this 7-year-old grows up to be a systems analyst.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child. And that can last a lifetime. Start something today at bigbrothersbigsisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Brad Friedman, your friendly citizen investigative blogger, journalist, troublemaker, muckraker, and all-around swell fellow from bradblog.com. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. 1 hour of troublemaking and muckraking ripped from the pages of bradblog.com and sometimes from the dark recesses of my mind. We'll have investigative interviews with newsmakers, we'll call out the liars, frauds, and phonies, and we'll even give kudos to the good guys if we can find any. Stories you won't hear anywhere else. We'll report on politics, elections, election reform, mainstream corporate media failure, media reform, global warming denialism, and everything before, during, and after. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday, now a full hour, 3 to 4 p.m., right here on Pacifica Radio's KPFK and coast to coast and around the globe on kpfk.org.
Hank Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on health care while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you to anybody who's listening over on We Act Radio, 1480 AM, WPWC in Washington, D.C. Joining us now is the one, the only, Allie of the 99 Report, Watergate Summer on Twitter, and doing the Lord's work up there in New York. Allie, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It really is amazing what you're doing. Just to have your email open over here to explain a little bit to people, but you're part of the New York City Medical Corps. You're reporting the stuff that most people are not hearing, and you are actually on the ground helping people. You're a nurse, am I correct?
I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for a long time. I have worked disasters before as a Red Cross nurse out west. I'll be honest, I never thought I'd be working a hurricane in New York City. That's a little different. So I'm a little astounded at what I've seen here. I mean, it is really staggering, and I think some of the media is actually even moving on now, and I think that's unfortunate because I think now is actually when the crux of the crisis is actually starting. I think Mayor Bloomberg has wanted everybody to see the city as a shining example of how to act in an emergency and that everything's moving along fine and we have transit back. And that's great, but it's not accurate. And I live in South Brooklyn. I live in one of the outer boroughs, especially the parts that were near water or within a 2-mile radius of water, got hit really hard. And so they set up evacuation zones saying that that would protect people. But then there were some problems with that because they didn't set up enough shelters for the lower end of like Brooklyn, Long Island. There was really no place for a lot of people to go, including Staten Island. Staten Island's gotten a lot of attention now, but there's other parts of like South Brooklyn that are, and also North Brooklyn, believe it or not, like Red Hook. There are other parts of Brooklyn that are still not getting attention, and it's not just poor people. It's also middle-class families who have like little teeny row houses down in like Sheepshead Bay, Gravesend, Coney Island. Coney Island got hit really hard and has not been on the news at all. I'm going to go there tomorrow to help clean up and take some photos. So follow me on Twitter and you'll find photos tomorrow. I've been posting some on Facebook also.
Absolutely. If we may, we would love to post those over on our site so people can follow along. I know that you know, although the media may be moving along, we're definitely still thinking about it here, and I know our listeners are.
Right.
You know, people want to know how they can help and how they can get involved.
Right. Well, see, part of the problem is usually like Red Cross and even my group would go into an area and set up shelters at schools. Well, schools got damaged. 60 out of 220 schools got damaged.
Wow.
So that's the other issue. And now the other thing that's entering the picture, which should help, but it might complicate things for a little while. National Guard is here, but they're only going to certain places. And what I'm concerned about is there's a lot of this Section 8 housing. It's low-income housing. It's for elderly. It's for like single mom families like me. And it's really struggling because most of those buildings are very old, and most of them have heat and electric damage. So, and that's not getting on the news at all. And literally, people in those neighborhoods have been taking care of each other, and walking to like broken fire hydrants to get water. There is no water, no power, no food. All the stores got flooded out. The other emergency that's going to come up here really quickly, I would say in the next week, is in this part of Brooklyn, most of the pharmacies got flooded.
Oh,
so
wow.
there's no meds for these old people or elderly people who ran out actually during the storm probably. So that's the next upcoming crisis that I see. And the other crisis that we have here is that a lot of the stores, people don't go to big grocery stores here. They go to little teeny neighborhood markets.
Right.
Well, the neighborhood markets got flooded out or their electrical systems got damaged, so they can't cool food. So those are the two things that are going on. And I hope I'm going to continue to nag like the mayor and Cuomo, the governor, and also anybody who's working on this, because I think the other neighborhoods need to know, it's fine to bring National Guard in and have them remove some debris, but the medical issues that are going to come up in the next month are much more serious. So anyway, so that's kind of the scoop. The other scoop that's going on that hasn't made the news yet, and I'll give it to you, is so FEMA's here. They've set up stations all over the city and on Staten Island too. And basically what they've said is they will give you an ID number and set up start the process for you, but they will not do anything with your home until you have electrical.
Right.
So, and that doesn't sound so terrible, except when you see these neighborhoods, then you kind of get it. Oh my God, they don't have electrical. There's still lines down in the street, so that makes no sense. And there's telephone poles down, so that makes no sense. And then the other piece of it is, so Con Ed, the major energy supplier here, has said that they will not turn on people's power until people have an electrician come to their home and inspect and see if it can be turned on. So it's a giant catch-22.
Yeah.
That all these, middle-class families are stuck in. They can't get their power on. They can't get FEMA. So they're in a no man's land. So that has to be also addressed pretty quickly. And it's not just a few families. It's probably anywhere from 20 to 50,000 families. It's a pretty big number.
Wow.
So yeah, and then in Brooklyn, Brooklyn's pretty big, and so when you start really adding up the number of neighborhoods that are actually affected, it's pretty large. And we were actually cut off from North Brooklyn for a while, subway-wise too. So I think the misconception was that, north part of Brooklyn had power, had energy, had water, everything was fine. So people kind of forgot about this part of Brooklyn. They didn't realize that down south was suffering a whole different reality. So anyway, so that's kind of the situation there. I'll tell you a little bit about the medical corps. The medical corps.
Well, before we get into that, we do
sorry.
have to run. It's okay. This is why we asked you to join us for 2 segments, because this is not something that can be discussed in 10 minutes. But we do have to run to a quick break, Allie, and I've been told you're willing to stick around with us through that.
I'll be here.
Okay, absolutely. We're going to run to a quick break, and we're going to be back right here on Talking Left to hear much more from Allie about this devastating condition. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We'll be right back.
A beautiful place full of wonderful things just waiting to be experienced.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Two heroes emerged at the polls this year, and neither was named Barack or Mitt. Their names are Galicia and Ken, ordinary Americans with extraordinary civic spirit. While about 40% of eligible voters didn't bother to cast their ballots this year, these two demonstrated that our right to vote is not something to take lightly. especially at a time when Republican officials in several states are going to extremes to deny millions of citizens that right. Galicia Malone, 21 years old, was making an urgent trip to the hospital Tuesday morning because she was about to give birth to her first child. Her water had broken, and her contractions were 5 minutes apart, so there was no time to waste. But Galicia points out that the opportunity to vote also ought not be wasted. So, contractions be damned, she stopped at her polling place in a Chicago suburb and patiently went down the entire ballot, determined to be counted in her first election. Ignoring her pains, Galicia says, "I was just trying to read and breathe. This is my first baby, a girl, and I wanted to make a good impression. I want to have a story to tell her." Having proudly delivered her vote, she then drove herself to the hospital and delivered her baby. Now that's a story. Ken Knight of Buda, Texas, is another die-hard voter. Literally. Sadly, Ken died from cancer the morning of Election Day. But the previous Friday, the last day of early voting, his wife and several friends lifted him, his wheelchair, and 2 tanks of oxygen into a van and drove him to City Hall. He was hell-bent on voting, Amy Knight says of her husband. It was a driving force for him. Her only regret was that she forgot to get an "I voted" sticker for Ken's ride home. This is Jim Hightower saying, so spare me any whining about voting being a pain or too much of a bother for you.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, the Workers' Independent News Service. I'm Jesse Russell. The CEO of Wisconsin-based Right Height sent a letter to employees encouraging them to not vote for the re-election of President Barack Obama. Michael White said there would be personal consequences for employees if Obama is re-elected. White has a history of violating election law. In 2011, White was accused of giving more than the maximum amount allowed under Wisconsin law to the election of Governor Scott Walker. White, who's also received more than $25,000 in stimulus funds from the federal government, gave $15,000 to Walker's campaign. White is now being hit with charges once again after an investigation by concerned citizens discovered White may have contributed under a false alias. Catherine Quinn is one of the complainants in the case.
After the email came to light, we did do some research on him because, it's usually part of a pattern. It's not, a single incident. We did some research on him and his contributions and found this kind of error, if you will.
If White is found guilty, he could find himself losing his right to vote, as felons can't vote in Wisconsin.
I don't know the specifics of what the actual punishment would be, but intentional contribution fraud is a felony charge. And so if he was charged with it, it would be a felony.
Quinn said it's important to remind millionaire CEOs that they aren't above the law.
I think the most important thing about this is that, a lot of these CEOs, these really rich folks, they think that they live above the law. They don't have to follow the same rules that we do. And so we really want to draw attention to that and make sure that elections remain democratic in our state and across the country.
Many people are wondering what organized labor's plan will be after the election, no matter who is elected. On Friday, Workers Independent News asked that question of AFSCME's Lee Saunders.
Well, we're going to try to arrest maybe a day. That's all that we can do. But we're going right into the lame duck session. There's going to be a big battle in Washington, D.C. regarding how we're going to spend our money, how we reduce the deficit, if we're going to raise taxes or we're going to cut very, very important programs that impact on working families. So we're going to jump right into that. And we're going to be fighting like never before. So our work is never done. We're going to enjoy, and I think it will be a victory. I know it's going to be a victory on November 6th, not only in Washington, D.C., but supporting politicians who support working families in state and local governments in those elections, and state legislatures and governor's races. We're going to have many victories across the country. We'll take a day of rest, but then after that, we're going to be right back on the streets fighting once again, supporting the issues that impact on working families.
Workers Independent News puts workers and their unions on the national radio news airwaves every day. To help keep labor's voice on the air, go to laborradio.org.
Hey, Dad, how do you throw a curveball? How do you build a fort? How do refrigerators run? How do fish learn how to swim?
Kids ask a lot of questions.
How high can you jump?
But you don't have to know every answer.
How many phone numbers are there?
Because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent.
How do cell phones work?
There are thousands of children in foster care who don't need every question answered.
What's electricity?
They just need you.
What's the moon made of?
For more information on how you can adopt, go to adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are continuing our discussion with Allie McNeil of the 99 Report, Watergate Summer on Twitter. Allie, you were just about to tell us about the New York City Medical Corps. Please, go ahead and tell us about that.
Oh, thanks. Well, I just wanted to emphasize it because they do amazing work, and what it is it's a group of doctors and nurses that decided that they would train themselves and be available for emergencies, and they got together after 9/11, and they formed this group, and it's now 6,000 strong, so it's a pretty big group, and they do amazing work. They set up, and so what they did was they helped set up the shelters here. They also helped provide medical tents at any of the shelters. So there was always a medic tent or a medical tent set up so people would get medical care. And it's especially important for like elderly or fragile or vulnerable people. So, and they also provided psychological support. They trained nurses and social workers to be available to talk to people and counsel them. There's a lot of people pretty traumatized by what happened up here. And so I think it really showed that that was a good segment of the training that was really needed. It was something that hasn't been really tested thoroughly before, but it's been really, really helpful to the people here. So, I just wanted to give them a shout out because they do amazing work, not just because I work with them, but and also because I think it's a model that the rest of the country should take a look at. It could really help some other big cities. I do not think that this hurricane, or they actually called it they changed it. They said it was a subtropical storm after it hit, which made no
Semantics.
sense. Yeah, it was like, and they gave it this cute, warm and fuzzy name, which was the other thing that kind of pissed everybody off, Sandy, it's so cute. And there was nothing cute about it. And so, but I think more of treating it as like it's a one-time phenomenon. I really do think people should take a look at it as, this is something we should be preparing for on both coasts and both coastlines, and really look at it as a global climate issue. And so a lot of people here are already trying to think of ways to better protect the shorelines. They think we should talk to Holland and talk about some dike issues. And also people are looking at different ways to try to protect the tunnels and the subways next time. Because nobody would anticipate, the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel would fill with 9 million gallons of water, or I think it was even more than that.
Wow.
But I mean, it's just phenomenal to try to wrap your brain around that. But so some of what's going on from the storm, I think, is actually a good thing. I think it made people really look at reality and realize these are issues we're going to have to face. And I never thought I'd be seeing a hurricane in New York City. I've lived through hurricanes down in Florida, as probably you have too.
Yes.
And but you certainly wouldn't expect one in New England or New York City or New Jersey.
It's a very different impact. Number one, there's not the underground transportation system, so that's not an issue immediately. The building requirements, at least since Hurricane Andrew, are much higher. So the storm damage tends to not be as widespread, more centered where the hurricane eye hits and where tornadoes struck.
Right.
But this widespread damage that we've seen in New York and New Jersey and the surrounding areas it really reminds me of Hurricane Andrew. And then you add with it this storm of sleet and cold that they've gotten afterwards. I have an email here from Daniel Marins. He's the executive producer of Take Action News, and he has a friend that is providing relief through Occupy Sandy in New York City, and he is currently in Brooklyn and Queens, and he's saying the same thing you are, that there are elderly, poor, and middle-class families without power, water, or food, and lacking the means to even live on their own. And they're in major need of food, blankets, and water. He's asking people to go to Occupy Sandy and donate, which is
definitely.
We'll definitely put the link up, but it's for anybody listening. It's interoccupy.net/Occupy Sandy. But I can tell you can Google it and it comes right up. So
right. The other piece of that is Occupy SandyRelief.net, and that's also on Facebook. They also are working with 2 big churches, and they are stocking a lot of food, blankets, etc. And they're part of the same operation. But the Occupy movement here is busting it. They are really taking care of folks. They're connecting people. If you follow them on Twitter, they really are putting messages out where they'll be, what they're collecting, what they need. They're also working with large groups of people, grocery stores. I mean, they are working with a whole contingency of people that the Red Cross hasn't even touched. So, and they mostly are getting out to people. They have it figured out, and they really are using Twitter effectively and Facebook. So they're amazing. Not to say anything bad about Red Cross. Red Cross is doing the best they can.
Not.
But the Occupy Sandy people are really getting things like blankets and food and baby formula and things like that.
Well,
so
in my experience, just from the hurricanes down south, which again I don't think measure up to what these people are dealing with, at least nothing that I've personally experienced does. The one thing that I've always witnessed is neighborhoods and individuals coming together and working together to help secure food, water, care for those who maybe can't care for themselves, getting them medication or medical care. And I've witnessed that even in neighborhoods where I didn't know my neighbors, they didn't know me, immediately there was this close-knit reaction to working together and ensuring that everybody was okay. And I think that's in our human nature. What it appears is Occupy Sandy is doing that on a level that's unprecedented, that bringing together such a large group of people and really providing a help that, as you were referring to the emotional strain and mental health professionals that sometimes are needed in this. Sometimes just having a friend, having somebody to care about you, even if you don't know that person, I think is just life-changing in a moment like this.
That's the people's response. And
right.
you know what the corporate response has been. Con Ed asked for a rate hike.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Corporations are people. If they're really nasty people.
Yeah. And Verizon has complained that they're going to have to up our fees, even though they still didn't bother to call anybody and ask for extra towers to be brought in. So, yeah. So, no, it's been very eye-opening. But the people here in New York City are amazing. I cannot say enough about them. I've been inspired. I've been moved by them. It really is a giant neighborhood. And I live in a part of the city, it's mostly immigrants and refugees, where most people, if you stand on a street corner, you very rarely hear English. It's truthful. But all kinds of people coming together, helping each other, just loaning each other candles, matches even. I mean, so it's been a really stunning reality that, and the other thing that really struck me about this is while all these people who don't even know each other are helping each other, and most of them are, new to America, I'm still listening to like the Mitt people and the Republicans, bashing these people. And I'm sitting here thinking, no, these people are truly the spirit of America.
Yeah, I can think of it. It sounds like a reverse Tower of Babel. But I was wondering, my question is, how are the local politicians reacting? What are they doing?
I have no idea.
Really?
I have no idea. I know that sounds terrible.
No, that doesn't sound terrible, at least on your part and theirs. Yeah.
Well, I have
not seen, it's other than the mayor. I mean, there was a lot of anger at the mayor because the mayor wanted to continue with the marathon. And that was, it was like he got a couple things up and running and he figured, okay, we're having this marathon. And people are still sitting in the dark. And the uproar here was unbelievable. Everywhere you went, people were complaining about it and talking about it. And firemen were pissed and policemen were pissed. And, I mean, everybody was pissed. And that was like the first release, like where everybody kind of came together like, no, we are not okay. And we're saying it. We're not okay. And, but so he got very quiet after that, actually. And then the governor has been amazing. I will say that. The governor, if you tweet him, he tweets you back. He responds. Yeah, he responds. Neighborhoods that people have said there's trouble, he sent National Guard in. He just totally bypassed the mayor. I don't know the politics of that situation, but I find it interesting. I've seen him really, and also he gives press conferences pretty much almost every 12 hours, and he has been very, very hard on the energy companies, particularly Con Ed. He is not happy with them. He's made it very clear to them that they have violated our rights and our what our needs are, and that they've contributed to an unhealthy situation. So he's on the people's side, and that's been really impressive to watch. I have no idea if he's Democrat or Republican. I really don't care. I've just seen that he's been busting his butt to help the people here, and that is impressive. I mean, people say a lot about it. Christie has been really working hard. Well, Cuomo deserves a lot of credit. He's really, really worked hard to make sure people realize things are not good here, but that we're working on it. As far as local politicians, I have no idea. And to be honest with you, I think if they were out working with people, they probably didn't get any notice for it, because the news crews only go where they want to go and where they're comfortable going, not in neighborhoods like mine, that's for sure. And so if politicians were going around helping people, we never knew about it. The one person who's kind of interesting, who's kind of entered the political arena, is Anthony Weiner. He is back on Twitter. He has been going to different sites in Brooklyn and helping. People have seen him. So I don't know if he's getting active politically again, or he just wanted to help his neighbors. I don't know. But I did find that interesting that he went back on Twitter to try to get some help for people.
I think that's very important, and everything you're doing is amazingly important as well. We definitely would like to stay in touch and hope that you keep us posted and let us know if we can reach out and get, we may not have the biggest audience, but I know that they're all very good people, and how they can help, how they can contribute. I know donating to Occupy Sandy and Occupy Sandy New York City Relief, we'll post both of those links, but please just let us know what else we can do from here.
Well, first off, thanks for letting me be on. I'm very grateful to get the word out. And I guess the other thing is, some of the groups that, people feel more comfortable with, like Red Cross, if they just want to give to Red Cross, that's okay too.
Yeah, absolutely. If
they want to give Salvation Army's doing amazing work here too. I will try to keep posting on Twitter other groups and organizations that are doing work. I also have been posting links on Twitter and on Facebook for people who need housing, because a lot of people have opened up their homes, and small little hotels are even giving rooms out to people. So I'll keep posting all that as well. But thank you so much for letting me spread the word. I hope in the next few weeks things start to get a lot better, but I think the next month's going to be really interesting, and something that people need to watch. Don't forget about us up here.
Absolutely, and don't let the media forget. Allie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
most
God
of all,
bless you for what you're doing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm an old ER nurse. I'm pretty hardy. So I'm good at digging out. I'm good at floods. So anyway, take care. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Allie of the 99 Report, Allie McNeil, literally doing the Lord's work up there in New York. Follow her on Twitter at Watergate Summer. We'll put the link up after the show. But what she's doing, she is a hero to us and to everybody in New York, and we need to remind her of that and let her know that we're here with her, supporting her. So donate to Occupy Sandy, and we're going to talk about another great thing Occupy is doing around the country. So don't go anywhere. This is Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, on RadioOrNot.com and We Act Radio, and of course, SoFlo Radio. Thanks to George Rodriguez. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Hal Sparks from the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. And this is Talking Left. Are you living in a progressive talk void? If so, be sure to visit leftwingradiosstations.com. The state-by-state listing is a quick and easy way to find any left-wing talk radio station across America, from sea to shining sea. Your progressive talk nirvana is only a click away at leftwingradiosstations.com. Be sure to like Left-Wing Radio Stations on Facebook and share it with your friends. leftwingradiosstations.com. United we stand.
Hi, this is Brad Friedman, your friendly citizen, investigative blogger, journalist, troublemaker, muckraker, and all-around swell fellow from BradBlog.com. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. 1 hour of troublemaking and muckraking ripped from the pages of BradBlog.com and sometimes from the dark recesses of my mind. We'll have investigative interviews with newsmakers, we'll call out the liars, frauds, and phonies, and we'll even give kudos to the good guys if we can find any. Stories you won't hear anywhere else. We'll report on politics, elections, election reform, mainstream corporate media failure, media reform, global warming denialism, and everything before, during, and after. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday, now a full hour, 3 to 4 p.m. right here on Pacifica Radio's KPFK and coast to coast and around the globe on kpfk.org.
Unfiltered truth, news, and opinion. Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
How do you impart upon somebody the disconnect or what's otherwise known as hypocrisy that people have, that they deny themselves from? You know, they live in denial and live in the illusion.
You can't tell somebody they're wrong. They have to see it themselves.
Yeah, they have to discover for themselves how to think that way. So how do you plant the inception?
Filter-free radio, Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Radio or not. And filterfreeradio.com.
Arr, you mateys, welcome to the ocean. I've sailed the seven seas 100 times and found something I like even more than me treasure. 'Tis the ocean, beautiful and clear. Right now I be sailing over the Great Barrier Reef. It just shivers me timbers thinking of all the fish and coral below me. Wait, what's that floating by? A plastic bag? By Blackbeard's eye patch, that's disgusting. Why did you know that many of these things come from folks throwing them carelessly on the ground? It be true. Lend us a hand by always recycling and disposing of your trash properly. Boys, get the plank ready. Somebody's got to dive in and get that bag. Any volunteers? All right, fine. I'll do it myself. Cannonball! Find out what you can do to help keep the oceans healthy at keepoceansclean.org. Brought to you by the Keep Oceans Clean Alliance and the Ad Council.
SoFloRadio.com remains on the air with free archives thanks to the support of our listeners. Help keep us on the air by clicking the donate button on SoFloRadio.com. And thank you for your generous support.
All right. Express yourself. Express yourself.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Big thanks to Allie. That was a great segment. And again, please donate to Occupy Sandy or Occupy Sandy New York Relief. All the links will be up on TalkingLeft.com after the show. And another big thanks to Adam Hebert for having us on Mic Check Radio last night. Check out his show.
That was fun.
Yes, it was fun.
Great group. Hilariously funny.
He does a great show on Ustream, /channel/Mic Check Radio. It's on Saturday nights. You can join the chat and hang out with him and his co-hosts there. Lots of fun. Not safe for work, but lots of fun.
Depends on where you work.
Yeah, that's true. But thanks to Adam for letting us tag along yesterday. We appreciate it. And we were talking about Occupy Sandy. They're doing great work. Just to let anybody know, as of this morning on Occupy Sandy's website, their current needs are blankets, flashlights, AAA batteries, gallon Ziploc bags, cleaning hardware, especially brooms, flat shovels, mops, masks, and gloves. They need hydrogen peroxide, white vinegar, any kind of baby food, scotch tape, duct tape, and toiletries and can openers. They say they've got enough general clothing supplies. But if you're anywhere in the surrounding area and you can donate some of that stuff, or you can contact them and figure out how to get it to them by mail, you could really make an impact in somebody's life. And as we've seen, Occupy and these people's movements making big changes up there in New York City. We're also seeing a new way they're helping people throughout the country.
And this is really cool.
In such an amazing way. This new project is called Rolling Jubilee. And essentially, it's a bailout of the people by the people. This group, Rolling Jubilee, will begin the People's Bailout on November 15th. They are buying debt for pennies on the dollar.
The way essentially the collection companies.
Right.
What happens is, we should explain. There's
many people may not know.
Yeah, trust me, I know about these things.
We both have a good idea.
Yeah. So if you have let's say you have a credit card with Citibank, and it gets to be you fall on hard times, you're not making as much, whatever happens, you stop paying, and they start sending you letters. You're late. We're getting pissed. We're going to report this. Da 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 da. Threat. At some point, they say, okay, we're not going to get this money back. We're going to sell this debt. And that they do is they sell it for pennies on a dollar to usually law firms or collection companies.
Right.
They write off the balance. So for 20 cents on a dollar, they're selling it, or 10 cents, depending on, there's all kinds of different factors on what it's worth. And then that company goes after you.
Right.
So
and just a tip, as I've studied the Fair Debt Credit and Collections Act, which a lot of these companies don't follow. It is something that's worth reading to know what your rights are, to know what's considered harassment. Yeah. And also, one big thing people may not be aware of, when that big company has written off your debt and sold it, they have written it off. It could still be on your credit, but they have written it off. They've considered it uncollectible. As soon as you have correspondence with that company that has bought the debt, if you pay them $1, if you agree to pay them $1, you have renewed that debt.
Not
it
that
is
we're
valid
offering
again,
any legal advice whatsoever here, because neither of us are lawyers.
Right, but I'm just saying, don't
what is this
listen to
about?
them. Rolling Jubilee. We buy debt for pennies on the dollar, but instead of collecting it, we abolish it. We cannot buy specific individuals' debt. Instead, we help liberate debtors at random through a campaign of mutual support, goodwill, and collective refusal. So essentially, they got together about $500, and they bought that debt, like Shane was talking about, for pennies on the dollar, and they simply retired it. So those people, they're not going to get the harassing phone calls.
The buying power of $500 is exponential from that, because the companies are selling it for pennies on.
Exactly.
So it's, if we say there's $1 trillion out there in credit card debt, that can be, sure, it's still $100 million, but for $1 million, you're buying off maybe $10 million in debt. $1,000 buys off maybe $10,000 to $20,000, or so it's essentially saying, F you.
Yeah, but I just think this is
and
awesome. Whoever thought up this idea is like my hero.
Because while the government will bail out banks, we don't see any bailout coming anytime soon for, and $700 billion, which they gave the banks, that would go a long way.
Yeah, they're going to officially begin this. They've already done this. They've already started to buy up people's debt, but they're officially beginning the People's Bailout with a variety show and telethon in New York City, and all proceeds from that event are going to buy people's debt and canceling it out. So if you'd like to go and donate, you can go to rollingjubilee.org and and chip
Brilliant
in.
idea.
Hey, $10 could buy some thousands of dollars worth of somebody's debt. So what people are doing in this country to support each other is truly amazing and inspirational, and that's just one more example of something we should be proud of as Americans. So we've got lots more in store. We also have Joshua Holland coming up later to talk about the fiscal cliff. We'll be right back here on Talking Left with me, Danielle, and Shano. Thanks for listening wherever you are. We'll be right back.
You know it's a good election night when you see Karl Rove have a hissy fit on national television. It came just after 11 p.m. when he heard a TV network declare Obama the winner in Ohio. This was not just any network, but Fox TV, the Republican Party's official propaganda machine. Rove, who is a rabidly partisan GOP hitman, also doubles as a Fox commentator. That network has simply amputated the word conflict from the ethical concept of conflict of interest. But I digress. Rove was just off camera on the Fox set as the on-air anchor team made the call on Ohio. In fact, he was on the phone at the time with a top Romney staffer who was wailing that Fox was wrong, that Romney was winning Ohio. With his right knee jerking furiously, Karl immediately demanded to be put on the air to rebut the network's own professional vote counters. He got what he wanted, publicly chiding his Fox colleagues for being, quote, premature. That prompted an unusual moment of dead air. after which anchor Megyn Kelly said, "Well, that's awkward." Since every news outlet and even Republican officials were by then conceding Ohio to Obama, Kelly asked whether Rove was using his own math just to, quote, make himself feel better. Bingo! Carl the Kingmaker was having a really bad night. He had talked assorted corporations and fat cats into putting some $300 million into his attack ads against Democrats, and he had some big explaining to do. American Crossroads, one of Rove's 2 political funds, spent $103 million to defeat Democratic Senate candidates, but the return on that investment was a pathetic 1%. This is Jim Hightower saying, Jon Stewart said that math you do as a Republican to make yourself feel better is a better slogan than the one Fox Now has.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham.
We made a promise, so we'd always remember. No retreat, baby, no surrender. Blood brothers on a stormy night with a vow to defend.
On his final campaign swing, President Barack Obama told thousands in Madison, Wisconsin that Mitt Romney is trying to sell old, tired ideas that have already failed. Obama said this election is about the future and is also about trust.
You know I tell the truth. And you know that I'll fight for you and your families every single day, as hard as I know how. You know that about me. And you've been there with me. And after all we've been through together, we can't give up now. Because we've got more change to do. Wisconsin, our ideas have been tested. We've tried them. They worked. The other side's ideas have also been tested. They didn't work so well. After Bill Clinton left office, during most of the last decade, we tried giving big tax cuts to the wealthiest Americans. We tried giving insurance companies and oil companies and Wall Street free rein to do whatever they please. And what did we get? Falling incomes, record deficits, the slowest job growth in half a century, an economic crisis that we've been cleaning up after ever since. So this should not be that complicated. We tried our ideas, they worked. The economy grew, we created jobs, deficits went down. We tried their ideas, they didn't work. The economy didn't grow, not as many jobs, and the deficit went up.
U.S. Senate candidate Tammy Baldwin said the nation has come too far to turn back now, and Wisconsin will help President Obama move the nation forward in the next 4 years.
We have come too far to turn back now and go back to the failed policies of the past. Tomorrow we have a chance to finish what we started. And I know tomorrow we will vote to continue moving Wisconsin and America forward. Forward with a strong middle class. Forward on a path to shared prosperity. And forward with President Barack Obama.
And I believe in the promised land.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It takes 12 years to create a graduate. It takes about the same time to create a dropout. And at the end of the day, the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be you. So United Way is asking you to make a pledge. Tutor a child who needs help. Mentor a kid who needs someone on their side. Volunteer to read to children. Because when a child advances, we all advance. Be a reader, tutor or mentor. Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Take the pledge now at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left. Good morning, everybody. Thank you to anybody who is getting up with us so early on a Sunday morning, listening wherever you may be checking us out, SoFlo Radio, radioornot.com, or, of course, We Act Radio live on 1480 AM WPWC in Washington, D.C. We appreciate you wherever you are checking us out.
Yes.
It's
after the fact.
And after, yes. Perhaps listening on the iTunes or YouTube for free. You can always get those at talkingleft.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shane,
Speaking of which, I gotta renew that.
Yes. Yes. We want to make sure talkingleft.com gets renewed.
Yeah, in the next 3 days.
Yes.
Happy Veterans Day.
Yes. Happy Veterans Day.
I'm interested to know what Mitt Romney will do if he'll ignore it, like he did in his speech.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what the Republican Party will do, like if they celebrate employers on Labor Day.
Yeah.
Perhaps they'll celebrate Dick Cheney today.
No, it's Defense Contractors Day.
Ah, that's
there
it.
You go.
Okay. Yes, but thank you to all of our men.
Military Industrial Complex Day.
Yes, thank you to all of our servicemen and women for all that you do, and may you get home from whatever quagmire you're in safely.
And if you are home, you're getting the support that you need.
Yes, exactly. So, of course, the big news throughout the week was the ridiculous long lines and disenfranchised voters throughout the country, especially in Ohio. A report on Friday from Think Progress highlights one judge's frustration with Secretary of State John Husted. He didn't take kindly to that last-minute directive issued at 7 p.m. on Friday night.
Do we know the name of the judge?
We do. It is, if I did not highlight, Judge Marbley. I don't have a first name. Oh, Algernon Marbley. Wow, that's a mouthful. However, he stated he called the Secretary of State back to court after his 7 p.m. ruling on Friday that was going to throw out many more provisional ballots. For anybody who isn't familiar with this was the previous Ohio legislation. The court order said that the responsibility fell on the poll worker to record the proper form of ID the voter used. However, Husted's directive said that if it was not properly filled out by the voter, that provisional ballot should be thrown away.
In other words, he was issuing a directive that was in direct contradiction to the statute.
Yes, exactly.
Wow.
Well, Judge Marbley did not take too kindly to that. They don't give me a first name in this article. Mr. Epstein, I'm guessing that's perhaps the attorney for John Husted. He says to Mr. Epstein, the first thought that came to mind was democracy dies in the dark. So when you do things like that seeks to avoid transparency, it appears, then that gives me great pause, but even greater concern.
Epstein is Aaron Epstein. He is the Ohio Assistant Attorney General.
Yes.
There you go.
The judge was upset specifically that the 2012-54 directive, the one to challenge more provisional ballots, was filed at Friday night at 7 p.m. on the eve of election. He goes on to say, show me the facts that the secretary used to make the decision to change this directive at 7 o'clock on Friday night on the eve of an election. I want to see it. And I want to see it now.
Ooh.
I like this judge.
Yes.
I kind of like him.
Yes. He was appointed by one William Jefferson Clinton.
Oh, interesting. Mr. Epstein's response, Your Honor, I have no legislative history to present to the court.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Do you have your toothbrush?
Essentially, I got nothing. I got nothing. There's no reason why John Husted wanted to do what he
I'm
did.
politically motivated. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. Because John Husted's a jerk.
Okay.
Really try to be mindful of the FCC thing right there.
He's a jerk.
He's a jerk.
He's a jerk face.
And in further proof that he's a jerk face, as you said, Shane.
There are a lot of words that are him.
Yes. He's got a great fancy new plan for 2016.
Oh, is it wonderfully fabulous for? I'm sure it's really in the Democratic feel for this country, how it was developed for liberty, freedom, and equality.
Absolutely. Already planning. He's planning ahead. In taking cue from Pennsylvania's Republican Governor Tom Corbett, who wants to award each congressional district with a single electoral vote rather than...
Oh, so they want to gerrymander the presidency.
They want to gerrymander the presidency. Why that did not pass in Pennsylvania, and so has not been the case, Ohio Secretary of State John Husted is now trying to put this plan in place for Ohio for 2016. He's planning ahead.
And this, if you think about this really carefully, Republicans cannot win popular votes.
No.
Unless you create, something, a district that looks like a giraffe and the thing is they do it so carefully. So essentially what's going to happen if this goes through, and first of all, there's 2 states, I believe, who do.
Yes, Maine and Nebraska.
Based on their congressional districts.
Right.
But then you're going to have essentially Republican state houses deciding who the president is. That's what it will come down to. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, the way they've cut up places like Ohio, Pennsylvania, you're getting 4 Democrats and 12 Republicans to the House, even though the popular vote is completely the other way around. So if you did it district by district, you would they get upset, or people generally get upset when more people vote for one person than the other, and the person who got less votes wins.
Right.
Because when you look at Republican versus Democrats in voting for the House, I think there was like 2 million more votes for Democrats, yet they still have a huge majority in the House because of the way
they've
these
gerrymandered the districts.
Are so it's up to the Supreme Court to overrule this gerrymandering BS.
Right.
But that would be outrageous.
It absolutely is. I mean, they give his reasoning here is that he wants to make Ohio less important in the election by dividing up electoral votes by district.
What state wants to become less? I would like to ask John Kasich that. His advice was come here often because it's a money influx for media, hotels, all that type of stuff. And then if you think about it, if Iowa was not the first caucus state, there wouldn't be no such thing as corn subsidies. So, and ethanol subsidies. States want to be paid attention to. That's why we have the electoral colleges, so that smaller states do get paid attention to.
Right.
So it's not just New York City and Los Angeles and Miami and Chicago that pick the president.
Right. To give an example, Ohio, for many who do not know, has 18 electoral votes. Under Husted's plan, if this was the case at the election, 12 of those 18 votes would have gone to Romney against the popular vote. And thus, in many situations, he would be our president-elect right now.
It would be amazing if they could. I mean, the thing is that other than the Voting Rights Act, the federal government has very, very little say in what occurs in these elections because elections are run by the states on a state-by-state basis. That's the way our Constitution is set up. So that's how Nebraska and Maine do that. More and more states could do that. I don't believe there's a lot stopping them other than the will of the people.
Right. Well,
can be powerful, as we can see.
Well, we've seen that it is powerful, but the will of the people didn't prevent all of these voter ID initiatives. They didn't prevent people's provisional ballots being thrown out.
Well, you'll see a lot of Republicans. You're going to see a lot of Republicans kicked out of the state house, and you'll see initiatives. You'll see, where in states where it's allowed, initiatives on the ballots to get rid of this kind of thing. Yeah. I think if anything, there's a push more to make the popular vote to get rid of the Electoral College, and there's some kind of deal where you have a certain number of states that I have to look it up, but there's a movement to without changing the Constitution, there's a way to make the Electoral College moot by states essentially saying if the popular vote goes that way, of a certain number of states over 270, then automatically they will send. So even if enough states with adding up to 270 electoral votes sign on to this thing, no matter how their state goes, if the popular vote is more for one person than the other, they will send all their electoral delegates. So therefore, popular vote will pick it. I'm not explaining it very well. I'll find the website. But there's a number of states who have already signed on for this. So there is a way to do it.
Well, the popular vote, I think, scares Republicans because it's
because they're not very popular.
Right. It's a lot less likely that they're going to win elections by popular vote. But
if you think think as a Republican, all that matters is winning.
Right.
They think, okay, we lost the Senate, so we can't do statewide. We lost the presidency, so we can't do Electoral College. What did we win? In quotes.
Congressional districts.
Right. So therefore, if we can win that way, then everything should be decided that way. And they also want to get rid of the popular election. There's an amendment to the Constitution that says, the states, based on popular vote, pick their senators instead of being appointed and approved by state legislatures. They want to get rid of that, too. So they really want the top upper echelon of a very few people to pick our leaders because they don't trust the masses. They don't like the masses.
They thought that they could trust that to corporations and corporate power and Citizens United, but it didn't work this time, did it?
Darn it. What, now they're going after the Voting Rights Act?
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little later.
Oh, okay. I'll look at the outline soon.
Yes, but just to give people a very important view of how serious these changes would be, especially if we see them drawn out across the country, this plan could have given 17 electoral votes in Florida for Romney, 9 in Michigan, 12 in Ohio, 13 in Pennsylvania, 8 in Virginia, and 5 in Wisconsin, which would have been a total of 64 additional electoral votes. And wouldn't you know it, if you add 64 to Romney's 206 electoral votes that he won, it adds up to exactly 270.
I'm sure it's just a coincidence.
Just a coincidence. Just shows, how much they have gerrymandered the districts.
But John Boehner says it's a mandate.
Yeah, he's going to cry about it.
I would love, in the House saying that everybody, the overwhelming number of people wanted Republicans to run the House. No, they didn't. Not based on the vote. Now, I would have liked to seen exit polling. Maybe somebody did this, asking people coming out. No, we don't. Tell us who you voted for. We don't care if it's Republican or Democrat. And then ask them, would you rather have the House controlled by Democrats or would you rather have the House controlled by Republicans? And just add those two numbers up. I guarantee you more people wanted the House to be run by Democrats, but because of the way the lines are drawn, the will of the people was actually subverted by gerrymandering. Period.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll see, no amount of gerrymandering can prevent landslide elections from changing the color of the state. And I think this 2012 election results showed that people are pissed off and they want change in this country. They want leaders that are actually willing to work to move this country forward economically and socially.
For everyone.
For everyone. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in 2 years with the House. See if there's any chance we can take it back despite gerrymandering to all hell.
I have a theory on the House. It's kind of like a baseball season. There's, in any baseball season, I think it's 120 games around there. And the old saying in baseball is every team's going to win 40, every team's going to lose 40. It's what you do with the rest of the 40 is what really matters. The House really should be like that. That you're essentially going to have a 1/3 of it that's going to be Democrat, 1/3 of it that's going to be Republican, and then that other third is what really gets decided year after year. That turnover in there is what would depict the mood of the country. Right now, the way the lines are drawn, it's not.
Hey, I say go for the Progressive Caucus, but that's just me. We've got lots more in store to talk about the Supreme Court, the fiscal cliff, and we're going to be joined by a great guest a little later, Joshua Holland, senior writer and editor for AlterNet and an amazing author and radio host. We will be right back here on Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, live on We Act Radio, 1480 AM, WPWC in Washington, D.C.
It reflects the drama of the human experience, and isn't that the essence of art?
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
My name is Joe Thompson. I'm 29 years old and have a career that I love as a systems analyst. Career. It still sounds cool to say that word. I never could have gotten on this path without a college degree. And if the college me were here, he'd tell you.
I never would have gotten to college without Big Brothers Big Sisters. I could have ended up anywhere, on the streets even. But college? Joe Thompson? Not likely. My big brother helped me out. He taught me I could do anything, at a time when a lot of people were saying just the opposite.
And to a 7-year-old, that means a lot. My big brother's name is Phil, and Phil is the reason that this 7-year-old grows up to be a systems analyst.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child, and that can last a lifetime. Start something today at BigBrothersBigSisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
Breast health awareness is critical for all women, particularly African Americans, because we have an increased risk of dying from breast cancer compared to women of other backgrounds. At U of M, I'm doing research here and with women in Ghana to look for an inherited link that makes African and African American women susceptible to a more aggressive type of cancer. Finding this link, I believe, will make new treatments possible. But right now, making sure that you are properly screened is our best protection.
With experts like Dr. Lisa Newman, the University of Michigan Health System is a leader in cancer care. When you call our free Cancer Answer line at 800-865-1125, an oncology nurse will answer any questions you might have about the prevention, screening, and treatment of breast cancer and other forms of cancer. All calls are confidential. Call 800-865-1125 or visit uofmhealth.org/canceranswerline.
We're working to help everyone enjoy longer, healthier lives.
That's the Michigan difference.
Hey there, Matthew Filipovich here, host of the creatively titled Matthew Filipovich Show, which, by the way, you can hear every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio. Now, I'm going to be honest with you people. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I like talking to smart people who are smarter than me, some of the smartest, funniest, most badass progressives out there. People like Glenn Greenwald, Naomi Klein, Jane Kuger of the Young Turks, Jamie Kilstein, Allison Kilkenny, Alan Grayson, Jeremy Scahill, Jim Hightower, and more. That's right, I said more. Don't believe me? Well, tune into the Matthew Filipovich Show every single Saturday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. for some of the best in liberal talk, news, comedy, and interviews right here on 1480 a.m. We Act Radio.
Friends, David Schuster here, and all of us at We Act Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the Ark. The Ark is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The Ark is also home to the Ark Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the Ark, so stop by and see them. The Ark, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the Ark's website, www.thearkdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The Ark, part of Southeast D.C.
That's men in the spotlight, losing his election, trying to keep Ohio too, and he knows now that he can't do it. Oh no, he spent too much and lied more than enough.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Special shout out to Rocky Mountain Mike for that amazing parody and our new theme song, which rocks. Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate it. And all the links to Rocky Mountain Mike's website, his pictures, his SoundCloud will not only be up with this show, but will be up with every show.
How's that early morning articulation going?
It's going awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need another cup of coffee. That's the good part of keeping me behind this
You
desk.
know we love it when we do it this way.
Yes. I can't get to the coffee. That's the problem. So in other jerk-face Republican governor news.
We sound like 5-year-olds who've been told not to swear by our parents.
Yes, exactly. Anybody listening can just insert whatever curse word they choose there, since we can't say it. Whatever your favorite one is, just put it there. Wherever we say jerk face, you can insert expletive there. Governor Rick Scott, yes, Governor Rick Scott defends his decision to limit early voting.
Shocking.
Awesome. Yeah. Because people waiting in line for up to 9 hours and some voting at 1:52 in the morning when the president was giving his victory speech.
That's a big rah for democracy. Isn't that wonderful and that's special?
Yes, actually. In fact, Rick Scott's exact quote was, "I'm very confident that the right thing happened."
No questions, and we really wanted to know about those long lines that we saw here at polling sites like this one behind me, and repeatedly he gave us the same answer as if he was prepared for the question and had rehearsed his answer.
Voters are fuming, calling it downright embarrassing that Florida still can't declare a winner in the race for president.
Ridiculous, unacceptable. We need to...
Gonna fast forward there?
You feel like you put politics before the people of the state of Florida. Why is it that you couldn't extend early voting?
Well, the right thing happened. 4.4 million people came out and voted either absentee or early. On Election Day, we had 20 times as many polling locations than we did on early voting. So we did the right thing.
Try telling that to the vote.
20 times more than we did on early voting. Not any comparison. Notice no comparison made to yes, exactly. No comparison made to last year or the last election, 2008.
So if they cut the number of polls by 50 times, and then they had 20 times as many, you still have less polls open compared to the last election.
It's not as if they didn't already know that there was a problem. I can tell you that in 2008, I voted early with my father and my brother in line with me. I believe we waited upwards of 4 or 5 hours in line in Florida to vote for President Obama. So it's not like they didn't know that there was already a problem.
12 days of early voting?
Yeah, 14. 14 days.
Now there was just 8 this year.
So they already knew it was a problem. They already knew they needed more polling places, more voting booths, more ways for people to vote.
I love that vague answer, the right thing.
It's the right thing.
The right thing for whom, according to what, and having what in mind is your goal.
Yeah, he says that as
that's a conclusion.
As the reporter said, he obviously rehearsed that line because he said it to WKMG, the local station there. He then repeated it to another station, WFTV. The first comment was, "I'm very confident the right thing happened." 4.4 million people voted. He says again, the right thing happened. 4.4 million people came out and voted either absentee or early. And Floridians have been now polled in response to this. And minorities and Democrats were far more likely to face long lines to vote than Republicans and white voters. Aren't you shocked by that?
No. I'm sick of it.
I'm sick of it too. People should not be forced to miss a day of work or stand on their feet for 9 hours or, be subjected to these humiliating, appalling conditions to participate in their democracy. It's absurd.
Yeah, the Help America Votes Act was nothing like that, just like the Patriot Act was unpatriotic.
Yeah, just like the No Child Left Behind.
Left a lot of children behind.
Yeah. I love these Republican bills. They just pretty much insert the opposite of
how
whatever
about
they
we have the Buy More Frickin' Voting Machines Act, or get rid of them altogether because paper is pretty cheap.
Yeah, although we saw in Wisconsin they ran out of paper ballots.
There's no trees there. I mean, they should have gone to where the trees are just the right height, cut some down in Michigan, printed up some ballots.
Yeah. Well, we have lots more to come.
I'm for purple ink on our fingers.
Hey, me too. You wouldn't need a voter ID, would you?
I'm all for it.
I am too. I have no problem with that. So we're going to get into the next big news about voting rights, and that's the Supreme Court's agreed to hear a challenge to the Voting Rights Act and why that is so important. We've got lots more in store, and again, Joshua Holland coming up next hour. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking Left with me, Danielle Shano, right here live on React Radio.
This is going to be fun. It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Executives in private equity firms, such as Mitt Romney of Bain Capital and Henry Kravis of Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, tend to be peacocks who think quite highly of themselves. Fanning their splendid tail feathers, they unabashedly claim to be the ultimate free enterprise risk-takers, worth every dime of the multi-million-dollar paychecks they award themselves each year. Excuse me, but the risks taken by these self-anointed heroes of the market are done with other people's money, not their own. But here's a revelation that really ruffles their feathers. They appear to have been gathering their riches not with bold competition, but with old-fashioned collusion. An antitrust civil lawsuit filed in federal court against 11 of the biggest equity firms includes emails in which they agree not to compete. In 2006, for example, the head of Blackstone sent an email to the co-founder of KKR. "We would much rather work with you guys than against you. Together we can be unstoppable, but in opposition we can cost each other a lot of money." The KKR honcho happily emailed back a one-word response: agreed. Collusion, of course, perverts the marketplace they pretend to worship, artificially lowering the market price they'd otherwise pay. In the 2008 takeover of the giant HCA hospital chain, for example, KKR expressly asked its market rivals to step down on HCA and not bid. Agreeing to this blatantly illegal collusion, one rival wrote in an email, "All we can do is do unto others as we want them to do unto us." This is Jim Hightower saying, of course, they're really doing it unto you and me. The equity outfits even have an insider term for their mutual back-scratching. Club deals, they call them. Forget about the vaunted free market. When the big boys want to profiteer, they keep it inside the billionaires' club.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you. The Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. The AFL-CIO today will release national election night polling and detail the labor movement's massive voter mobilization efforts. AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka and Political Committee Chair AFSCME President Lee Saunders will also outline how working people plan to hold elected officials accountable to continue rebuilding a middle-class economy. Key findings from voters will be highlighted in the first post-election poll by Hart Research Associates. AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka says labor political activists knocked on 5.5 million doors and made 5.2 million phone calls during labor's final 4-day push to get out the vote. Trumka said that effort was important for President Obama, especially in Ohio and Wisconsin. This election year, labor welcomed activists from organizations like MoveOn.org and Planned Parenthood to multiply its outreach capacity beyond union households. A new 6-year labor contract for 1,500 flight attendants at Pinnacle Airlines was ratified by the workers on Tuesday. The Association of Flight Attendants, CWA, says the agreement preserves wages, protects affordable health care, and provides job security. The agreement also includes $6.4 million in concessions demanded by management in the bankruptcy restructuring process at the airline. The union doesn't like the agreement, but ratified it with help from the National Mediation Board in an effort to minimize the impact on flight attendants. Meanwhile, a union representation election has been scheduled for 9,700 passenger service agents at American Airlines. Voting instructions are being mailed in December, and the results will be counted January 15th. Wisconsin continues to feel the repercussions of returning $810 million in stimulus money for high-speed rail. Jesse Russell reports.
Train manufacturer Talgo had opened a plant in the state thanks to the rail funding. But when Governor Scott Walker took office, he returned the funding to the government, citing costs of upkeep as the reason for rejecting the money. That decision left Talgo in an awkward position due to an additional contract it had with the state to also build passenger trains for Amtrak's Hiawatha line. It was the necessity to build these remaining contracted trains that prevented the company from packing up and leaving the state completely after the high-speed rail money was lost. The company kept 125 workers in place to complete that contract. Talgo now alleges that the state has refused to put the trains in operation and is also refusing to pay millions of dollars it still owes for them. The case has gone to court, and if the state loses, it'll also lose out on $50 million spent on the project. The state responded to Talgo's allegations by saying that the trains don't meet basic federal standards and that Talgo had failed to do proper testing. In a strongly worded statement, Talgo CEO Antonio Perez said, "I don't see how any company would in the future choose to do business with the state of Wisconsin when the state has shown it cannot be trusted to honor contracts that it signed."
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
When I have an asthma attack, I feel scared. It's kind of like an elephant is on my chest. I feel like I'm choking. Sometimes my parents have to take me to the hospital.
You know how to react to their asthma attacks. Here's how to prevent them. Call 1-866-NO-ATTACKS. Visit www.noattacks.org or call your doctor, because even one attack is one too many.
I feel like a fish with no water.
Brought to you by the EPA and the Ad Council.
Hey, victims of the system. Did you hear that? Victims of the system. Bubbling. Why you a bubbling?
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are live here on We Act Radio, and right now talking about voting rights, something that is so amazingly important in this country.
Yeah, as we saw of late.
Yeah.
And miraculously, the Friday after that election, what happens?
Nobody talks about them?
No, the Supreme Court has a conference committee.
Yes. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a challenge to a key provision of the Voting Rights Act. For anybody who's not aware, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is a landmark piece of legislation in the United States. It basically outlawed discriminatory practices by states that prevented people, especially of race or color, from voting. It essentially requires states that have a history of blocking a certain race from the polls to get any changes they want to their voting procedures pre-approved before allowing them to be implemented.
By the federal government.
By the federal implement. Specifically, Congress intended the act to outlaw the practice of requiring poll taxes, poll tests, literacy tests, certain ways that specifically southern states kept African Americans from voting.
Right.
Right.
So, and the key word is in there, historically.
Historically. And now we see the Supreme Court has agreed to hear a challenge to this key provision.
Is it Shelby County, Alabama, is it?
Yes. Alabama would no longer, they don't want to be burdened anymore by the
federal government overseeing them. And
right.
I believe their argument will be much like the argument that the university, that the student suing the University of Texas in the affirmative action case brought forward.
I think you may be correct, and remind everybody what that argument is.
Well, essentially what happened is University of Texas has an admission process that takes into, first of all, there's the 10%. If you're in the top 10% of your high school class, you're automatically admitted to UT schools. And then the rest of their freshman class is put together with a number of factors, academics, but also social background, which can include as a part of that race. That was challenged, the affirmative action part of that race is considered at all. And the argument before the court was, is this necessary anymore? Is racism done in the college campus? And what Shelby County is, hinging in that historically, saying, essentially, well, we have a black president, so obviously there's no problem here. So federal government, leave us alone. Let us have our, 10th Amendment back. Leave us alone. We want to make whatever rules we want.
Exactly.
But they're using, and I'm really concerned about using that argument that, well, see, all these black people are voting, so therefore there's no problem anymore. I see the problem, and they're going to say that because of all that, but the relevant inquiry is the laws that are being enacted, does that increase or decrease intentionally or even negligently the number of people of a specific race, of a specific ethnicity from getting to the polls? And we can see that while perhaps in some areas it's better, there's other areas that weren't historically doing this, and now they're doing it.
Right, like
Look
Ohio.
at Ohio. So there is evidence of this. It's only more.
Yeah, the interesting part is that there was a similar case presented to the Supreme Court back in 2009. And the court actually surprised most people by not siding with those who wanted to overturn the key voting rights law. Now, the makeup of the court has changed since then, but not predominantly as far as, the number of liberal justices and conservative justices. Haven't we added Elena Kagan since then? Shane's giving me the puzzled look.
I can't remember exactly when Sandra Day O'Connor left. Because if Sandra Day was replaced by Alito, then there would be a switch on that. I just don't know if that particular case...
2009.
Oh, obviously not. Duh.
Yeah.
Duh. I'm getting my 4-year chunks mixed
Yeah.
up. Of course not. No, then it has not switched.
Right, but, not... But Sandra Day O'Connor was much more...
But Sandra Day was before.
Right.
So Alito was on the bench in that 2009 ruling, obviously. Duh.
But the Supreme Court previously refused to strike down the key voting law.
Did they even hear it, though, back then? I was under the impression they just said...
No, they heard the case, according to Think Progress.
But they kind of said, well, we can't come up with any kind of standard, so we're not going to talk about it right now.
No, they heard the case and surprised most court watchers by not striking down.
But the reasoning for not striking it down was like, well, this time we can't really come up with a kind of a guideline.
We can't find a good enough reason to strike it down.
And essentially, there was a judicial way of saying that. Yes,
okay.
I'm not kidding around.
That could very well be the case.
What's the name of the old case?
It's not mentioned here in this article.
I should know it.
You should know it, Mr. Supreme Court reporter.
Shush. I'll know it by February and March when they argue this one.
Yes, but no, this is just a very short article on Think Progress. It's about a paragraph. I think this is such an important piece of news. If they hear this challenge and overturn the only federal protection we have for voting rights, it could have some very dire consequences in this country for future elections. You are completely reading over there and not paying attention to a word I say.
Wow. It was the last time they challenged Section 5, 2009. They handed down an 8-1 ruling, but it was a narrow ruling. They didn't declare it unconstitutional. But I want to see why real quick. Keep talking.
Okay, so they didn't declare it unconstitutional. 8-1 ruling, you said, though?
Yes, but on a narrow ground. I believe that narrow ground is, well, we can't quite figure it out right now.
We don't have a good enough reason to overturn it.
They didn't say it that way, but it was about a measurement. We don't know how to measure at this point. We don't have a
Well, wouldn't you say that the 8-hour lines in elections that were a direct result of these types of laws, voter ID laws being implemented, is a pretty adequate measurement of the impact these laws would have on states throughout the country?
No.
Why not?
Because obviously those laws are in place right now. So the Voting Rights Act didn't even prevent that.
Well, in southern states, they were not cleared for a lot of the changes. These were states that were not subject to the Voting Rights Act.
Right. Well, okay, then that's a decent one. So, but your argument would be to expand it then? Remember, and this is a really key point. One of the parts of the Republican Party platform at the convention was
to eliminate the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, to get rid of it.
Well, this is the same ridiculous racist argument we hear all the time. Anytime the subject of racism comes up, well, we have a black president, so racism can't possibly exist in this country anymore, which is a complete ridiculous argument. It doesn't have any effect on racism throughout the country just because there's a black president. If anything, we've seen
anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, and if anything, we've seen racism increase because people are just so pissed off that Obama has won the presidency. You found out anything more about this case?
I'm getting there.
You're getting there. All right. Well, it's just something we really need to watch in the coming Supreme Court. It doesn't say when they agreed to hear this case.
Northwest Austrian Municipality. Utility District Number 1 v. Holder. That was back in 2009. Hang on.
All right. Shane is furiously trying to get us more information about this. I just think it's something that we really need to keep an eye on. And although we don't have any control over how the Supreme Court rules on this issue,
they declined to rule on the constitutionality of the provision, citing the principle of constitutional avoidance, merely concluded that the district was eligible to apply for an exemption from this section because the definition of political subdivision included the district of this nature. So they kind of punted, if I have the right case here.
Okay. It's pretty interesting. It's something we'll definitely have to keep an eye on.
So I wouldn't rely on the makeup of the court in comparing it to this case because they essentially didn't get to the question, really, of the constitutionality of it. They essentially said, you can be exempted, so get out of here.
Well, but do you think that something like this, while voting rights is so forefront in everybody's mind, and
will it be by March? And,
I would think so.
And they're ruling in June?
I would think so.
Well, we have to make it that way.
I mean, are you going to forget waiting in a 9-hour line to vote?
I'm not talking. I think no one is going to forget waiting in a 9-hour voting line. I do believe that the press will forget to cover it.
I just think that if we keep this in the media, if we keep talking about this and keep it at the forefront, so people are still angry about it, that you could have a case like...
I don't even think angry, just concerned.
Right, but you could have a reaction like Obamacare, where even though we don't have a control over how the Supreme Court rules on everything, it is possible that they ruled slightly because of public pressure.
Sure.
I mean,
possibly.
couldn't we have the same effect here on voting rights?
Yeah, I would just keep an eye on the Fisher v. University of Texas case, and if affirmative action in colleges goes down, look for this to go down too. Anytime you put civil rights up before the Supreme Court, it's a scary thing. When you have 9 kings and queens essentially ruling on whether or not there's still institutional racism in this country.
It is a very
because
scary thing.
they're not exactly, amongst the rest of us on a regular basis.
Yeah, as was witnessed after the hurricane.
Right.
When we didn't report that?
That's right. The Supreme Court was open
during the hurricane.
Day of the hurricane.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yes, you are summoned to appear.
You are summoned to appear.
You think of the clerks and all the staff there, Secret Service, the police, and the
all
attorneys.
Of those people
the attorneys.
In harm's way.
People who are getting sworn in to become members of the Supreme Court bar, because they do that every argument day. Different people, who get, admitted to the Supreme Court bar so they can argue in the future. All those people, if they're scheduled to be there, had to be there because King Roberts said so.
Wow.
As, being driven in his SUV, probably.
Well,
I don't know that for a fact, but I would imagine that's
when
the
we
case.
hear more on this case, as far as when the case is going to be heard, and
it was just
you'll
a conference.
probably be there.
I will be there.
Yeah, you will be there
Unless I'm...
to give us a full report on it. But we are going to go ahead and run to a break, and we will be... We will be right back here on Talking Left with me, Danielle, and Shano, live on Radio or Not, SoFlo Radio, and of course, We Act Radio, 1480 AM, WPWC in Washington, D.C.
Holy crap!
We'll have more on these new developments after this.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Hi, friends. This is Tom Hartman.
This is Stephanie Miller.
Hey, this is Hal Sparks.
I'm Brad Friedman. I approve of Nicole Sandler's RadioOrNot.com.
Radio or Not.
Radio or Not.
RadioOrNot.com. RadioOrNot.com.
RadioOrNot.com. RadioOrNot.com.
You never know who or what you'll hear when you listen to the Nicole Sandler Show at RadioOrNot.com.
Bill Maher, you're here in Miami on Friday night. You're doing a show at the Fillmore at the Jackie Gleason Theater. They just renamed this theater the Fillmore. And they put up a couple of psychedelic posters. So I guess...
Was it the theater Jackie did his TV show from?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
What I hear they did is put up 2 of those old Bill Graham posters and renamed it.
Yeah, I can't think of 2 different icons of show business.
Yeah, really.
Bill Graham and Jackie Gleason.
Yeah, why they just didn't play up the Jackie Gleason aspect, I don't know. But then again, this is South Florida.
Right. Okay.
Welcome to it.
I feel warned.
The Nicole Sandler Show, live Monday through Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, or podcast anytime at RadioOrNot.com.
Hi, this is Kenny Pick from Turn Up the Night. Here are some of the hijinks you can expect from my show.
That right-wing Republican from Texas was only helping Dennis because he thought Dennis would be easier for Joe the plumber to beat than
Well, yeah, I mean, seriously, a pet rock would have been better candidate than Joe the plumber. I think he might actually have been a pet rock before he was a non-plumber. So, but he was a union pet rock, never mind. Turn Up the Night with Kenny Pick, streaming live every Tuesday and Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern at Radio or Not, Talk Radio 1, Progressive Blend Radio, and KennyPick.com.
You know that the ice cream scoop has the power to make a child smile, and that by slowing us down, the traffic light can keep us going. You know that the golf tee brings friends together, that the mailbox keeps them connected, You know that the cataract laser helps you look to the future, while the pacemaker ensures that there's a future to be seen. You know that the lawnmower, the clothes dryer, and the elevator make life easier, that the blood bank makes life possible. You know that these things we count on every day started as ideas. But did you know all these ideas came from the minds of African Americans? Support minority education today so we don't miss out on the next big idea tomorrow. The United Negro College Fund. A mind is a terrible thing to waste. Please visit uncf.org or call 1-800-332-UNCF. Brought to you by UNCF and the Ad Council.
The most important online radio station.
It's easier than ever to listen to SoFlo. On the air and everywhere. On any computer, any mobile device, iPhone, iTouch, and anywhere you are, just hit SoFloRadio.com. Tell your friends about South Florida's radio network, SoFloRadio.com.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Back in time. Great choice there for our next topic. Many people who listen to this show may be familiar with the Strauss-Howe generational theory, but for those who are not...
Nicole Bell was the first person, I believe, the first time I remember someone explaining it to us, and she explains it far more eloquently than I could.
And far more eloquently than I can as well. But essentially, it's a theory by William Strauss and Neil Howe that identify a recurring generational cycle in American history. And they basically go back through biographies all the way back to 1584, and they discovered a trend that every 80 years, the country shifts, that there is a
repetition of general principles and ideas and hurdles and solutions and economic, all those different types of cycles. There's a saying that history repeats itself only to people who don't remember the details. But they proved, and they call it, I think the name of their book is the Four Turnings?
Yes.
They take
the fourth turning.
Fourth turning, so there's 80-year chunks.
Yes, exactly.
So those two ascribe to that theory, and I'm one of them. To see what's going to happen next, look back 80 years.
Right. Basically, 80 years ago, we see a preview of what we could probably expect.
Generally.
Yes.
And
obviously, like any theory, it's a theory. It's not,
there's
a lot of evidence supporting this.
Not every single detail is going to occur, but the general trends are similar. And if you think about it, 80 years ago, Great Depression, we had Hoover.
80 years ago,
and then
from this election in November of 1932.
November 9th, I think.
Yes. Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president.
There you go. There you have it.
Yeah.
So, and I remember when then Senator Obama was elected to be president, a lot of people were calling for an FDR. Those people were the grumbliest of all in the second election. I'm glad they turned out and voted for Obama again.
And they had a right to be, upset that he was not as progressive as they would have liked to be, but
he was dealing with a different, but some similar, Obama had a problem with the legislature. FDR had a problem with the Supreme Court.
Right.
So difficulty and, obstacles from a co-equal branch of government, although one could argue, I think quite well, that the Supreme Court is no longer co-equal. They dominate because they're the last word. So there is an issue right there that FDR had to deal with. He tried to make them less equal by stacking it and making all kinds of different rules, which is brilliant. The question is,
I wish Obama had that kind of control over the House. He could just start adding more Democrats.
There you go.
No.
Constitution.
Exactly. It's
Who
fine.
cares?
Just add a couple more.
Article 1. I'm rewriting Article 1 right now.
Yes. But, so 80 years ago from November 1932.
But that was FDR's first term.
It was his first term.
And all the big stuff happened in his second.
He defeated incumbent Herbert Hoover with the bouncy popular song, Happy Days Are Here Again. Just thought that was an interesting tidbit.
Oh, it's a new day.
Yes. So be very interesting to see if we get an FDR in Obama's second term?
Well, it's a second term, and there's some significant differences in terms of term limits. Now, FDR accomplished a lot, but he had nearly four terms.
To
he
do
died
it.
actually in office in his
Right.
fourth term. Of course, the Constitution's been since been amended. 2 terms is the most the president can get. So there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
A little bit of work to do. And no one's asking. I mean, it would be wonderful. But take some notes. I'd be surprised if President Obama hasn't already referred back and studied greatly the work of FDR and tried to apply some of those principles.
Yeah. How about
to
a
what's going
chicken
on.
in every pot? Get some public works projects going, green energy, infrastructure.
He tried that.
Well, he can try again.
Oh, I'm not. What I'm saying is I'm giving him credit for trying.
Yeah,
he
I
absolutely
give him
tried
credit
it.
for trying too, but now it's time to move into action.
Right, and turn this debt conversation into to heck with the debt. Let's stimulate and grow, and that'll get rid of your debt.
Exactly.
Stop worrying about the darn debt.
I think it's really interesting that you see those 80-year patterns, the Strauss-Howe generational theory. It holds a lot of weight among political historians, political experts, historians in general, and
armchair political geeks like us.
Yes. 80 years ago, FDR was elected. Will we see an FDR in Obama's second term?
And he called it a liberal victory.
Yes, he did. I wish I could find that paper of the New York Times.
Yeah, he called it a victory for liberal thinking and progress and all those things. And, I wish I will call this a last election because if you look at all of the returns, not just the presidential, yes, it was a victory for liberalism, small L, liberalism, progression, moving forward, making positive forward change. Because if you look down ballot, if you look at initiatives, anyone who claims otherwise is just doing it for political punditry to offset a tide that they don't like very much. In other words, conservatives.
Well, maybe, this is our opportunity to start pushing the president and to start pushing the Supreme Court and Congress to really fight for those progressive values that we want. We got him reelected. Now it's his job to work for us. And, there's lots of people who, including myself, who said, we need to vote for him and make sure he gets reelected. Well, this is his opportunity to return that favor and to fight for us. And not to say that he hasn't.
I'm sorry, getting elected president is no favor.
Oh, well, not to say that he
hasn't. That.
Not to say that he hasn't done that to some degree already, but there's a lot more work to do, and he's only got 4 years instead of 4 terms to do it in. So, here's to Obama. Can he be the next FDR?
Or just something approaching.
Yes, something interesting to watch for. We'll be right back. We're going to be talking about Karl Rove and his little
that was fun.
His little on-air spelly on election night.
Spelly, that's the first time I heard him referred to as that.
Yes, that's one way to say it. So was Karl Rove delusional? We'll get into that next. Don't go anywhere. This is Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, right here on SoFlo Radio, radioornot.com, and, of course, React Radio.
Not bothering to vote is deplorable, but preventing others from voting is disgraceful and disgusting. Yet, voter suppression has become an acceptable, routine, and widespread political tactic of Republican officials, operatives, and funders. This year, the vile nasties of suppression were in full howl in such key states as Florida, Ohio, and Wisconsin, telling lies and twisting the rules to deter minorities and other likely Democratic voters from casting ballots. Voter fraud is a felony, screeched 140 billboards strategically placed in inner-city neighborhoods of Ohio and Wisconsin. They pictured a judge's gavel slamming down, along with this message, 3.5 years and $10,000 fine. Subtle, huh? The ads had no disclosure of who paid for them. When told they'd have to own up to their sponsorship, The cowardly suppressors chose instead to have the billboards taken down. Well, they can run, but they can't hide. The Einhorn Family Foundation of Milwaukee was behind this nastiness. It's the right-wing plaything of the billionaire Einhorn family, venture capital hucksters who use their fortune to back right-wing politicians and, get this, to, quote, promote liberty. Then there are sorry public officials like Florida Governor Rick Scott, who rig election rules to make voting hard to impossible for many Democrats. This year, he slashed the days for early voting almost in half, had thousands of unsuspecting voters purged from the rolls, and refused to alleviate nightmarish wait times of 3 to 9 hours at some Democratic polling places. But, declared this cynical scoundrel, I want everybody to get out to vote. This is Jim Hightower saying, and I want political thugs like him to get out of the way of our democracy. To help, connect with the Brennan Center for Justice at www.brennancenter.org.
If you'd like more of Jim Hightower's real populism, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter gives you the real lowdown on which corporations, by name, are doing what to the middle class, our environment, and our democracy. Each month, the Hightower Lowdown brings you facts you didn't know, along with actions you can take to fight back. It also comes with a sense of humor. Hightower believes we can fight the gods and still have fun. Plus, get this, it's cheap. Only $15 brings you 12 issues a year. For real populism, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers' Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham.
There was a very precise message from this election. With their votes, working people, working families made clear that they want solutions that respect hard work, that strengthen the middle class, that invest in America, and build upon working together, not driving people apart. I've never seen so much energy, so much enthusiasm, and so much determination. And despite the tidal wave of corporate cash, in most cases secret corporate cash, this election proved that there's no match for the strength of grassroots people power.
AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka. Trumka says a powerful grassroots movement of working people, a diverse 21st century America, rejected the Republican vision for America's future. Trumka says starting today at 100 events nationwide, AFL-CIO activists will begin letting the lame duck Congress know that working people will not pay the price for tax cuts for the rich.
Activists will send the message to our elected leaders that it's time to say no to benefit cuts for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and yes to fair taxes on the wealthiest 2%.
AFSCME President Lee Saunders says the election was about reclaiming American values.
The American people sent a clear message, sent a very clear message, that we will stand with the president who stands with all Americans. Working families reelected President Barack Obama, giving him added strength in the fight to create jobs and create opportunities in this country. The voters have given a mandate to protect vital programs like Medicare and Social Security and Medicaid and strengthen the middle class. You know, this election was not just about who sits in the Oval Office. It was about who stands up, who stands tall for working people.
Michigan's controversial emergency financial manager law was struck down by voters on Tuesday. Jesse Russell reports.
The Emergency Financial Manager Law, introduced by Democratic Governor Jennifer Granholm in 2000, was originally intended to give the state of Michigan the power to appoint a financial manager in struggling school districts and communities to help get them back on track. When Republican Rick Snyder was elected governor in 2010, he enhanced the power to also allow the managers to strip union contracts, terminate elected officials, and overrule the power of school boards and city councils. On Tuesday, the voters rejected the broad new powers, leaving cities and schools wondering what that means for emergency managers currently in place. In one case, the state appointee of Detroit Public Schools, Roy Roberts, told the governor turning around the school system would be virtually impossible if control needed to be shared with the school board.
This newscast made possible in part through underwriting support from the OPEIU, the Office and Professional Employees International Union, and by IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers.
You've been listening to WIN, the Workers' Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Hey, Dad, how do you throw a curveball? How do you build a fort? How do refrigerators run? How do fish learn how to swim?
Kids ask a lot of questions.
How high can you jump?
But you don't have to know every answer.
How many phone numbers are there?
Because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent.
How do cell phones work?
There are thousands of children in foster care who don't need every question answered.
What's electricity?
They just need you.
What's the moon made of?
For more information on how you can adopt, go to adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, live on We Act Radio, radioornot.com, SoFlo Radio, Progressive Blend Radio, and of course, our home sweet home, TalkingLeft.com, where you can check out the podcasts, the YouTube videos. You can subscribe to the free iTunes. It's a great site. Thank you, Shane, for building us such a cool home over there at TalkingLeft.com. Didn't know if you were going to...
I was closing the window because there's helicopters outside.
They're coming for us?
Finally.
They found us.
Yeah, we're so hard to find.
Yes. So many people witnessed, or at least have heard, about Karl Rove's reaction to Ohio being called on Tuesday night.
It seems to happen every 4 years with him.
It does, but this was an exceptional display.
Remember 4 years ago? It was like,
yes.
Oh.
But at least 4 years ago, they accepted it once it was called.
Sure.
This year...
Well, he hadn't spent a couple $100 million of other people's money.
Exactly.
4 years ago.
This year, not only did Karl Rove essentially go nuts on television, but he also had Megyn Kelly stalk the decision desk, walk all the way back through the halls of Fox News to challenge their decision to call Ohio for Obama.
Right.
Well, there's
I have
a name.
some of the audio.
Do you? Oh, well, please, go for it before we get
I'm
into
going to ask you a straight-out question. You went through this in 2000. You almost went through it in 2000. Do you believe that Ohio has been settled?
No, I don't. And look, if we are calling this on the basis of 74% of the vote being in, and when 77% is in, Secretary of State website, I got the director of the Ohio campaign for Romney on the other end of the line, refreshing the page every few seconds.
refreshing.
This went on for a long time.
Yes.
He debated Michael Barone from the decision room.
Yes.
You know, those darn facts.
Those darn facts. They
numbers.
always have a
We don't
liberal
like
bias.
numbers.
Well, we have a theory about Karl Rove, and it also happens to apply to many of those over there at the Fox News.
I have to say, it reminded me of was it the second debate? Second or third with Candy Crowley when Romney said you didn't call it an act of terror for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that
and
smug look on his
face. And then all of a sudden, you know, because that was a Fox News thing for weeks, and all of a sudden, whang, right in the head. Here's the facts, and they're like, what? When faced with actual facts instead of their BS, they seem to short circuit.
Yes, and the Encyclopedia of Mental Disorders.
It's funny you went right there.
Has a name for that. It's called delusional disorder, and it is a medical condition.
I've always called it cognitive dissonance, where they believe something that's untrue and then try to take all the facts and jam it into their...
We, of course, are not doctors.
No.
So
nor is Dr. Keith Abloh, I think.
Right, so we are not
should ask him about this.
diagnosing anybody, but we will simply read you the description of this disorder.
We can just do one of those FDA disclaimers, not approved to their treatment or diagnosis of any disease or condition.
We'll simply read you the description of this disorder, and you can decide for yourself of whether or not Karl Rove may be afflicted with this disorder, as other people on Fox may be. So the delusional disorder is characterized by the presence of recurrent, persistent, non-bizarre delusions. Now, non-bizarre being a medical term here, because I know a lot of their conclusions are pretty bizarre to some of us. Delusions are irrational beliefs held with a high level of conviction that are highly resistant to change, even when the delusional person is exposed to forms of proof that contradict that belief. So essentially, even when presented with facts like climate change is real, Obama's not a socialist, and he won Ohio, we see them essentially refusing to believe it.
Makes sense.
Sounds like a good fit for them, huh?
How bizarre.
It goes on to say, unlike most psychotic disorders, the person with delusional disorder typically does not appear obviously odd, strange, or peculiar during times of active illness. Now again,
how bizarre.
This is subjective because to us, the liberals, they do often seem odd, strange, or peculiar. But, this is a medical perspective.
It's their defining characteristic at times.
Yes. The person just might make unusual choices in day-to-day life because of the delusional beliefs.
And unusual predictions.
Unusual predictions. Unusual willingness to accept facts. Again, we're not
just throwing it out there.
We are not medical professionals. Just thought this was an interesting theory. It even goes on to talk about forms of the delusional disorder, and this one, I think this one is specific for Karl Rove. The grandiose style of delusional disorder involves the conviction of one's own importance and uniqueness, and it takes a variety of forms. Believing that one has a distinguished role, check. Has some remarkable connections with important persons, check.
Well, wait.
Or enjoys some extraordinary powers or abilities, like how to determine who won an election.
The thing is he actually has all those.
Right, but
in reality,
he has them. But don't you think his belief for them
is even
far
bigger?
Exceeds.
Well, certainly the election results.
Reality.
The elections results, seem to point that out, that he doesn't have the incredible authority that he thought he did.
Yes. I thought.
But and so when you confront these people with something that's not like their delusion, that disproves their delusion, they short out.
Like Karl Rove did on air on Tuesday night. You don't even have to be a Mitbot to short out that much. Uh-oh.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
That's what I was looking for. Yes, apparently it's not wise to confront a person with delusional disorder and present them with reality. They don't respond well, as witnessed on Fox News Tuesday night. According to the Encyclopedia of Medical Disorders, of mental... Wait, let me go back here. Encyclopedia of Mental Disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Agitation in delusional disorder is a typical response to severe or harsh confrontation when dealing with the existence of delusions. So essentially, when you try and present them with reality, they get a little agitated.
Right, because everything they know, everything they think has been destroyed, and they're actually fearful.
Right. Well, I think Karl Rove in this case may have been fearful for other reasons.
Well, but when you're in fear, you worry about your safety. When you worry about your safety, you defend yourself. You become, So he was worried about his political career and the fact he owes. Well, I mean, they weren't loans, but he got lots of powerful people to donate lots and lots of their money for an investment in a presidency that he didn't deliver, and he bet their money and lost.
Yeah, I think his fear in that situation may not have been a delusion. I think he may have had a little. He may have had a little justification.
I guess he
did
some kind of conference call with his donors a few days later. Maybe it was Thursday. Oh, what I wouldn't give for the tape of that call.
Yeah, to be a fly on the wall. Of course, this is...
To be a bug in that line.
Of course, this is tongue-in-cheek. It is satire. But it is amazing how some of those medical definitions line up with the outside view of Karl Rove and many others on Fox News.
Or you can just put it... Essentially, you paid off the refs, and the refs don't do what you want.
Yeah.
We lost the game anyways.
They would be pretty pissed.
Now, one person who did not, who when faced with facts, actually, it was an amazing thing to watch on Fox. Brit Hume.
Yeah.
Actually becoming introspective, reevaluating his belief system.
Don't you have that audio as well?
I do, and now I'm sure he snapped right back afterwards.
Of course, as soon as that prompter was turned back on.
And he tempered it. He all these things, but you could hear him trying to work it out in his head, how the facts in front of him were not lining up with his belief system and how he believes this is a center-right country. Now, he says, I still believe it's a center-right country, but he's just saying those words. I think he was coming to the conclusion that maybe it's not as far-right as he thinks it is. So here's a couple clips of him.
Many of us have believed, and I still basically do, that this is a center-right country, and a lot of conservatives have taken the view that liberals are really on the wane. And if you look at the night's exit polling that we've seen so far, those who self-identify as liberals are about 24%, conservatives 35%, moderates 40%. Now, this apparent outcome tells you one thing about those moderates, that there are in that category an awful lot of them who are actually liberals. If you take the conservative number 35%. There's certainly a share of those moderates who are, moderate to conservative. So you've still got, a center-right country, but it's more liberal than many may have thought looking at those numbers, and it got to be.
It's got to be more liberal than he thought.
Well, I think it was also big of him to admit that many in those in the moderate category are likely liberals.
We've been postulating that for years now,
right.
That just because you're not party affiliate doesn't mean you're in the middle.
Right. And those who really don't side with the policies. There's definitely those, in the Republican Party that perhaps want social issues slightly more right or want, economic issues slightly more moderate. And then there's the Democratic sides with, those who are kind of within that big bubble, those who want more progressives, those who think maybe we're spending too much, just to, throw an example out there. But most of those independents are also likely to be the far extremes.
Well, and if you look at what happened in terms of the down-ticket election, Republican moderates are gone.
Right.
They aren't there. And we have more liberal Democrats. We have Elizabeth Warren. We have Ellen Grayson.
I think the Republican moderates being gone is more a result of gerrymandering than a result of
I think their base is more extreme than they used to be. I think that their base is more extreme, and they feel more comfortable being extreme.
Well, I think this election it has the potential to be the undoing of the Republican Party, because you have major figureheads in the party saying two different things. Those, like your Brit Humes, like even, for God's sakes, Sean Hannity, coming out saying we need to be more moderate to pull in some of that electorate. And then you have Rush Limbaugh and Mitch McConnell and Laura Ingraham saying, no, the problem was that we weren't conservative enough. We didn't go after women's rights enough.
We were listening to Mark Levin, too.
Yeah.
Was it Mark Levine? The guy who ghostwrites Sean Hannity's books.
Levin.
He has a voice like this, and he was quoting from a book, a well-respected book that no one has reviewed.
And he went on and on talking about this book, and then it turns out, as he's going into break, and it was written by him.
Yes. He was pissed that nobody reviewed his own book.
And how wonderfully
you do that voice well, way
too
well.
Very much.
Way too well.
Yes.
You should just say something about Stephanie Miller.
Stephanie Miller, who's been up and coming for the last 20 years. Has no
Perhaps
audience.
we can re-record that ad and have him say nice things.
Oh my God, he would be so upset. What is this talking left that no one listens to? What's React Radio? Progressives in D.C.? Unheard of.
All right. Well, we do have to go to a break. We just have a few more minutes before we're going to speak with Joshua Holland, senior writer and editor at AlterNet, host of AlterNet Radio Hour, and, of course, author of The 15 Biggest Lies About the Economy. I have a feeling he may have an opinion on the so-called impending fiscal cliff.
And for all of you who have a copy of his book, turn to Chapter 5. We may be talking about it.
Yes. So we'll be right back here on Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. You're listening to us live on We Act Radio, RadioOrNot.com, and, of course, SoFlo Radio. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Everyone expected just a piece of fluff, but we wanted to do something important. Issue stuff.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
It's our last errand today, Jimmy. Just need to pick up some light bulbs.
Whoa, there's so many. Did Grandma tell you which ones to buy?
No, but check out the label on this package. It'll help us find the right bulbs.
Does it really matter?
Well, sure. The new light bulbs use a lot less energy, so we save money on our electric bill by using an energy-saving incandescent, CFL, or LED.
How about this bulb?
Let's see. We need to replace the 60-watt bulbs in our bedside lamps. That one is 800 lumens, so it should do the trick.
I've never heard of lumens.
Lumens tell us how bright the light is. The more lumens, the brighter the bulb.
You know, Grandpa, you're a pretty bright guy.
Yeah, you're pretty smart yourself, Jimmy.
Lumens, the new way to shop for light. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. That's EnergySavers.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Energy.
You may be hearing about people having trouble making mortgage payments and risking losing their homes. Many of them just aren't aware of the options that can prevent foreclosure. There are many options available to homeowners, such as repayment and forbearance plans, loan modifications, and even refinancing. Where does someone go for help? They should talk directly with their lender or a qualified HUD-approved counseling agency. Both can provide helpful information without charging a fee. According to PMI Mortgage Insurance Company, it's not a good idea to pay for services that you can get for free from a lender or a qualified nonprofit counseling agency. To learn more, visit homesafepmi.com or call HUD at 1-800-569-4287 for a counseling agency near you. That's 1-800-569-4287. This message is brought to you by PMI, supporting sustainable home ownership that strengthens communities.
Friends, David Schuster here, and all of us at WEAC Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the ARC. The ARC is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The ARC is also home to the ARC Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the ARC, so stop by and see them. The ARC, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the ARC's website, www.thearcdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The ARC, part of Southeast D.C.
Hello, my name is Antonio Ford from A Plus Fitness. I've been studying foods, nutrition, and the anatomy of the body for well over 23 years. One thing about an animal-based diet is it kills people in every bite. It kills you by restricting blood and oxygen from flowing freely throughout your arteries, thus causing all kinds of life-threatening health problems and issues. If you want the blueprint for healthy eating, stay tuned to WEAC Radio for more information, or contact us at aplus.fitness@yahoo.com. Again, that's aplus.fitness@yahoo.com, or give us a call at area code 202-903-6323. Remember, it's one bite at a time.
Welcome back to Talking Left. Yes, there is work to do, and great folks like Harry Reid and Senator Kristen Gillibrand in New York are already starting that process, calling for filibuster reform. It's about damn time. Yes.
It looks like there are going to be a number of many more filibusters on motions to proceed. Do you think do you have any plans to change the filibuster?
Yes, I do. I've said so publicly, and I continue to feel that way. I'm not going to talk specifically, but you asked a question, I'm answering it. Yes, I do. I think that the rules have been abused, and that we're going to work to change them. We're not going to do away with the filibuster, but we're going to make the Senate a more meaningful place. We're going to make it so that we can get things done.
There you go. Get things done.
Yes, Senator Gillibrand joined Harry Reid, Dick Durbin, and 7 other Democratic senators-elect in endorsing the change. Kristen Gillibrand put out the tweet, "I agree with Harry Reid. We must change the rules of the Senate and reform filibuster to get Washington working again." Amen to them.
Love her.
Yes, and while they're doing their hard work at getting Congress back to work, getting American people back to work as well, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Oh, no.
Not so much. Yes. While the Democrats are already starting to try and fix the political process and get more legislation through to help the American people, Mitch McConnell is already promising conservatives that he will not agree to any tax increases.
He doesn't have to agree.
Right.
He doesn't have to agree. That's the problem he's having. He doesn't have to agree. If he doesn't agree to anything, they go up. They actually reset to where they were before they were lowered. Because they were supposed to sunset a long darn time ago.
Yes. That was the whole original premise.
They're not raising taxes. They're stopping the lowering.
Yes, he was quoted saying, "I wasn't sent to Washington to raise anybody's taxes, to pay more for wasteful spending, and this election doesn't change my principles."
It does change his goals, though.
Yes.
Our top political priority over the next 2 years should be to deny President Obama a second term.
Wow, and my father is in the chat room. My father is in the chat room and said Reid has also said that cuts to Social Security are completely off the table.
Yes, he has.
That's awesome.
Because Social Security is not going bankrupt.
Thank you. One more time for anybody
Social Security is not going bankrupt.
Just in case they didn't hear it.
That comes from a Koch brothers funded study through one of their think tanks that they've funded, and then they throw it out. If you watch the Koch brothers exposed, it's a documentary. Go to Current TV, do a search on your thing, record it, watch it, how this happens. They fund think tanks. They do BS reports. Those reports are read by paid pundits who go on TV, who then spout it. Then the people who like it, the hosts that like it, they keep propelling it, and then it becomes repeated, and the truth.
Yes.
Even though it's false.
And you get people like Mitch McConnell who will hold our country hostage for his own political purposes. And why? He's up for re-election in 2014. Perhaps his constituents won't be too happy with him.
I know that Barack Obama would never do this, but I would love for him to say, my top political priority in my first term is to make sure that Mitch McConnell doesn't get reelected.
I would applaud.
He's a much bigger person than either one of us, though.
Yeah, I mean,
so he wouldn't.
Even John Boehner came out and admitted that there will be some need to raise revenues. However, he also adds the statement that any tax hikes of any kind are unacceptable. So essentially, you'll raise revenues by limiting deductions on charity, home income, earned income credits, school.
We were researching, watching the Fox News, and even though Mitt Romney wouldn't say what deductions, I don't remember who it was, but they finally just came out and said it. Those are the three things we have to go after. We have to look at charitable deductions, home, and child credits. Well, that's the only way.
This is the damaging type of attitude that's already in place as we approach the so-called fiscal cliff. And coming up next...
It's not a cliff.
Exactly. But coming up next, Joshua Holland will be joining us to talk about the 15 biggest lies about the economy, this so-called fiscal cliff, and what we're going to do about it. So don't go anywhere. We're very excited to have him coming up next. You're listening to Talking Left on We Act Radio.
Hey, this is Hal Sparks from the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide, and you're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
They came, they spent, and they limped home, tails tucked between their legs. Okay, they didn't limp. They were flown home on their private Gulfstream jets, but still, their tails were tucked down in the defeat mode. They are the billionaire far-right corporate extremists who tried to be presidential kingmakers. Unleashed by the Supreme Court's Citizens United edict to spend unlimited sums of cash in this year's elections, they spewed money into efforts to enthrone Mitt Romney in the White House and turn the Senate into a GOP rubber stamp for totally corporatizing government. As they gathered at exclusive Romney victory parties on election night, however, the mood quickly soured. For key states were choosing Democrats. The people, damn them, seemed to be deliberately voting against the barons. Casino Baron Sheldon Adelson, for example, put down an obscene $60 million on 8 candidates and crapped out on all of them. Also, the uber-billionaire Koch boys reportedly amassed an arsenal of $400 million from their corporate vault and from other billionaires to knock off Obama. But at evening's end, there the president stood, re-elected with more than 56% of the electoral votes. And Bob Perry, another self-serving ultra-rightist billionaire, dumped $21 million into GOP super PACs, trying to win Senate races in Florida and Virginia, as well as the presidency. All for naught. Democrats not only gained 2 seats in the Senate, but such new senators as Elizabeth Warren, Tammy Baldwin, Heidi Heitkamp, Mazie Hirono, Joe Donnelly, Chris Murphy, and Martin Heinrich are expected to stand against the corporate kleptocracy that the barons were trying to buy. This is Jim Hightower saying, of course, the billionaires reckon that they just didn't spend enough this year. So look for even more obscenity in 2014 and 2016.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. AFL-CIO Political Director Michael Podhorzer says it was working-class rejection of Bush-Romney-Ryan economics that drove victories for President Obama and U.S. Senate candidates in Ohio and across the country. Podhorzer says that Labor's massive ground game also delivered by reaching working-class voters with a focused message on economics, especially in battleground states. Households with at least one union member and Working America households voted 66% for Obama. Working America is a community affiliate of the AFL-CIO, active in several states. Its members are not union members. AFL-CIO Secretary-Treasurer Liz Shuler says that volunteer activists who make Labor's campaign ground game happen are very passionate, and they're motivated by a variety of individual reasons, but also share basic values and beliefs.
They all have unique reasons, really, for what drives their activism, but they also all have a common belief system and set of values that bring them to this campaign. And that is, of course, preserving the middle class, fighting for good jobs and investments in education and health care, and making sure that we all play by the same rules. I mean, it actually makes you want to cry, the passion behind what drives these folks. So that's what cuts through the noise, right, of all these negative ads, and what really has made a victory for working families across this country.
Westgate Resorts founder David Siegel made headlines in October after sending out a letter telling his employees he'd likely need to cut back on staff if President Barack Obama won in his re-election bid. Instead, he gave them raises. On average, every Westgate employee will see an increase of 5% in their paychecks starting this week. Siegel told Bloomberg Businessweek that he made the decision so his employees can better, quote, handle the additional burdens the government will put on them, end quote. More labor unrest is gripping South Africa. Jesse Russell reports.
A farm owner has been arrested in the Western Cape of South Africa for attempted murder after firing on protesting farm workers. The workers have been protesting since October 30th, demanding higher wages. The workers allege that the government wasn't paying attention to their demands, so some farm workers set fire to a vineyard in protest. The workers earn on average the equivalent of $8 per day, and they argue that isn't enough to support a family and feed their children. They've dubbed the wage a hunger wage. They're demanding that commercial farmers growing grapes and citrus for export should pay the equivalent of $17 per day. The farming unrest in the Western Cape comes at the same time as South Africa is seeing labor unrest in other industries, most notably mining. Gold, coal, diamond, platinum, and iron mines have all seen workers put down tools and walk off the job, demanding better wages and working conditions.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It takes 12 years to create a graduate. It takes about the same time to create a dropout. And at the end of the day, the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be you. So United Way is asking you to make a pledge. Tutor a child who needs help. Mentor a kid who needs someone on their side. Volunteer to read to children. Because when a child advances, we all advance. Be a reader, tutor or mentor, give, advocate, volunteer, live united. Take the pledge now at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Yes, you are. Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle, and Shano, live on We Act Radio, Radio or Not, SoFlo Radio, and Progressive Blend Radio. We are very excited to be joined by our next guest, Joshua Holland, the senior writer and editor of AlterNet, host of AlterNet Radio Hour, 4 to 5 p.m. on Saturdays on We Act, also available in a podcast, and the author of a great book, 15 Biggest Lies About the Economy. Joshua, thank you so much for taking time with us so early on a Sunday morning.
Thanks for having me, Danielle.
We couldn't think of a better guest, somebody with your amazing expertise, as we're hearing all about this so-called fiscal cliff. Off the bat, do you have any thoughts about that term? We've been a little uncomfortable with the term cliff being used. What do you think about that?
I despise the fiscal cliff. It's remarkable how something that's so wrong can become so ubiquitous. I actually convinced Jamel Bouie, who blogs for the Washington Post, to stop saying it, or to at least, if he says fiscal cliff, put in quote in parentheses, not that a lot will happen on January 2nd. It's a contrived crisis. The cliff itself, if it were to kick in, there's deep spending cuts, there's tax increases across the board. It's a very blunt instrument, but it doesn't happen on January 2nd. The cuts, the tax increases would take weeks and in some cases months to impact the economy. So there's time to negotiate. And the problem with the cliff is it suggests that there's some imminent deadline that we have to meet. And if we have to have a bad deal, that's what we have to do to avert disaster. I'd also remind people that there's no reason that Congress can't just undo the cliff.
Exactly. A cliff intimates that once you go over it, you can't go back, that you are essentially going to fall to the ground like some Wile E. Coyote cartoon and explode upon hitting the desert, and that's it.
Exactly. And it also suggests a natural formation, something that exists in nature. Congress passed a piece of legislation. There is no piece of legislation that Congress can't unpass.
That's an excellent point. I hadn't even
the fiscal cliff anytime. Now, what I think they're going to do, I don't see a deal in the so-called lame duck session. I don't think that that's going to be possible. I may be wrong. I think that they will, in fact, move the so-called cliff back, the slope, the fiscal slope, back for a few months to give themselves negotiating room.
Now, Joshua, we are, of course, speaking with Joshua Holland of AlterNet. If you could enact your own piece of legislation, if Joshua Holland was king of the Congress, what would you call for as far as, tax increases or any type of budget cuts? What would help the economy the most right now?
Well, I would not be cutting the budget at all. I would probably be increasing I would be increasing spending. I would be sending more aid to the states. If you look at the employment situation, we've taken 2 steps forward, 1 step back. The private sector has been adding jobs while we've been slashing jobs very, very deeply at the state and local level. Those are public sector jobs. And if we had maintained the Economic Policy Institute did a report on this actually a few months ago. They got lost in the shuffle. If we had maintained the employment levels at the state level, we would have right now unemployment that I think was 2 points lower than we do now. So, there is this kind of contrived budget hysteria.
Right.
The reality is that Keynesian economics has not been disproven. It still works. Paul Krugman wrote a book, We Could End This Depression Now. All we have to do is have the political will.
Yeah, absolutely. And stop caving to national and international corporations, like the credit rating agencies. that
that
manipulate our
clown
economy.
themselves, right? I mean, there's no consequence that we see from having high budget deficits right now. The United States government can borrow at nothing, at basically nothing. So we can borrow money at nothing. We can put people to work. You can look at the so-called People's Budget that was released by the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Yep.
These ideas are out there. They don't get any play on the, opinion pages of the Washington Post or the New York Times. But if you ask economists, could we stimulate this economy to get it going? We could. We could have done it 2 years ago. We could do it tomorrow. We can end this depression now.
And this contrived concern by the Republicans, this sudden, ridiculous hysteria about the deficit. Can you explain, for people who do not know, who haven't read your amazing book, how out of the blue this is, how Republicans have never cared about the deficit until a Democrat's in office?
Well, I mean, the Republicans tend to increase deficits when they're in the White House. And that's because they promise tax cuts, which everybody likes to hear, and they don't say we're going to cut popular services, and they don't follow through. So the cuts that they bring about are generally not impressive. Even though they talk a big game about cutting government, they don't do it when they get into office because people like those popular programs. The most important thing to understand, I think, in our political economy is that people are distrustful of the idea of big government in the abstract, as an abstraction. But then you say, well, what do you think about, Social Security and Medicare and having a strong defense and fighting fires in the forest?
Or FEMA after a hurricane.
Government services in the specific. So politicians don't like being elected out of office, and they say, I'll just throw all these tax cuts at your way, and it won't cost you any services. And they tend to, and I showed this in the book, over the last 60 years, when Republicans are in office, deficit spending tends to be increased at a faster rate than when Democrats are in office. And we just have this bizarre upside-down world conventional wisdom that it's the opposite way.
Absolutely. And so what can we expect to see from the Republicans, besides the obvious, refusal to raise taxes? Do you expect any new tactics, any new rhetoric from the Republicans as this quote-unquote fiscal cliff approaches?
Well, the rhetoric that we're already hearing is that, we won't raise taxes, but we might be amenable to raising revenues by closing loopholes.
Yeah.
This is, again, something that sounds very good. But when you say, okay, which loopholes are you going to close? You're going to close the home mortgage deduction? By the way, a lot of economists, even on the left, say that that's not a great deduction, but middle-class people really like it, and they probably would punish any politician that takes it away from them. Are you going to take away the deduction for companies to provide health care? When you get into the nitty-gritty here, it's something that I don't really trust, this idea of, they'll accept increased revenues. Well, we'll see. I would think that the White House has a certain amount of leverage now. They just won an election. The election was the especially tax rates on the top earners. That was a really key part of the argument. And Obama talked about it all the time. Romney talked about it. He's won. Obama has won. That should give him some leverage. But then the question is, does John Boehner, Speaker Boehner, have the votes within his caucus, even if he wants to cut a deal? This has been the thing that's really been interesting to watch the last 2 years. I think many times when we've seen these hostage situations, the Speaker of the House has wanted to cut a deal, and his caucus hasn't let him.
Right. Well, he has been, as much as we can disagree with many of his policies, he's been in the game a long time. He knows that there has to be some compromise at some point for progress to be made and work to be done. And then, he's...
And there's a story I think today or yesterday about him having a conference call with the caucus, essentially saying, get in line.
Right. Because he has these freshman Tea Partiers that refuse to cooperate, that, it's my way or the highway, and just will not allow any progress to be made. And just like you said, Joshua, it'll be interesting to see if they essentially hold Speaker Boehner hostage, or even push him out and nominate somebody else as Speaker. Any thoughts on that?
It's a rough job to have right now. You really do have this kind of caucus that's out of control. I think that it's possible you could see a play for the speakership. Eric Cantor has certainly been nipping at his heels for the last 2 years. You know, the thing is that if you look at the true believers in the caucus, they are right in one sense, in their own analysis, from their own perspective. The right's overarching narrative is that government doesn't work, that it can't proactively help society, can't improve society, can't do anything. So when they get into office and they gum up the works, it doesn't hurt their overarching ideological narrative the way it does Democrats, who are saying, look, we're reformers. They've been running on that line for 30 years. But we believe in the basic functions of government. We want to govern. And the fact that you have one side that wants to move the country ahead and the other that is fine, displaying how dysfunctional government can be, is a real structural disadvantage for the Democrats.
Absolutely. Well, in the minute or so we have left, we know you're on the West Coast, and we really appreciate you getting up so early to join us. Any predictions? The fiscal cliff, you say it will just be pushed down the road, kicked the can down the road, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, that's my best prediction. I don't believe that they'll be able to cut a deal. Everybody's already drawn battle lines. Both Speaker Boehner and Mitch McConnell said that they won't raise taxes on top earners. President Obama has said that he made it a key part of his platform. He won an election, and the Bush tax cut specifically targeted for those making over $250,000 must go. I don't see a deal with this Congress, and the Senate is becoming more progressive in the next term. So it's kind of the White House interest as well to kick that can down the road.
Yeah, that's what I would think. The Republicans wouldn't want to kick it down the road because they know they have less leverage in the next Congress. But some of their Tea Party stalwarts are going to be looking for a job now. So Boehner may actually have more leverage in the next House because if you look at Joe Walsh, Alan West, others, some of the most, I'll say it, crazy ideologues are no longer there.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, Joshua, thank you very much. We really appreciate you taking time with us, especially so early for you on the West Coast. But brilliant book, brilliant radio program. We will make sure to put all the links up on talkingleft.com with our show this afternoon. Thank you so much for taking time with us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Have a great day, and keep up the amazing stuff. We'll keep following it.
$4 p.m. Saturdays.
Joshua Holland, everybody,
4 p.m.
senior
Saturdays.
writer and editor of AlterNet, and of course host of AlterNet Radio Hour from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern on Saturdays on We Act Radio, available by podcast for anybody who may not be able to listen at that time, and author of a great book, and you can get an e-version, so you can get it on your phone or Kindle, whatever you prefer to use, 15 Biggest Lies About the Economy. Follow him on Twitter.
Well-footnoted book as well.
Yes, at Joshua Hall, Joshua H-O-L. But again, all of those links will be up with the show. We do have to run to a break, but we will be right back here with the last few minutes of Talking Left. Thanks so much for sticking around with us. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
See, that wasn't so bad, was it?
Ooh, I gotta say, that was fantastic.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Hi, this is Tim Cormall from The Tim Cormall Show. Join me and my guests most weeks for a progressive roundtable discussion about politics, news, and other fun topics. We laugh a lot about the hilarious antics of the right-wing nutjobs, as well as have serious discussions about issues affecting all of our lives. You can check out The Tim Cormall Show at timcormall.com, and you can subscribe to the show for free in iTunes by searching for The Tim Cormall Show. You can also follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Tim Cormall. That's Corrimal. So come on over and join in the fun at timcormall.com.
Unfiltered truth, news, and opinion. Filter-free radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott. Live every Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. Radio or not. And filterfreeradio.com.
People don't think critically anymore. Just to examine or critique the system, the culture, political assumptions, things that they see on TV. I mean, whatever happened to the saying, oh, don't believe everything you see or hear?
Live every Monday, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern.
You never know who or what you'll hear when you listen to the Nicole Sandler Show at RadioOrNot.com.
Your view is not being represented in this country because all of our views have been corrupted by money and politics. Remember, 94% of the time, the candidate who raises the most money wins.
That's the fact that we need to drive home constantly. It's all about the money. Dylan Radigan, you rock.
The Nicole Sandler Show, live Monday through Thursdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, or podcast anytime.
7,000 high school students drop out every school day. That's one every 26 seconds. So here's a 26-second message of encouragement.
Hi, I'm Stacy. Look, I've been there. It's tough. And I just want to say, if you find yourself feeling negative, use it as motivation. Let it be like the fuel in the fire to keep you going. 'Cause the best is yet to come. Seriously, you're capable of great things. Things you probably haven't even dreamed of yet. So don't quit now. See you at graduation.
Do you have 26 seconds to convince a student to stay at their desk? Now you can share your message of support at boostup.org. We can keep students in school. Visit boostup.org and take the first step. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
Hey, Dad, how do you throw a curveball? How do you build a fort? How do refrigerators run? How do fish learn how to swim?
Kids ask a lot of questions.
How high can you jump?
But you don't have to know every answer.
How many phone numbers are there?
Because you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent.
How do cell phones work?
There are thousands of children in foster care who don't need every question answered.
What's electricity?
They just need you.
What's the moon made of?
For more information on how you can adopt, go to adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
The most important online radio station.
It's easier than ever to listen to SoFlo. On the air and everywhere. On any computer, any mobile device, iPhone, iTouch, and anywhere you are, just hit SoFloRadio.com. Tell your friends about South Florida's radio network, SoFloRadio.com.
Welcome back to Talking Left. Just a few more minutes here before we have to wrap things up today. And we wanted to highlight the GOP's sudden concern for diversity. I mean, it's so authentic and heartwarming.
There couldn't be a
that
reason.
They're suddenly concerned about diversity.
Sean Hannity.
Yes, Hannity on Thursday night on his show.
I thought it was during his radio show.
Yes.
So it was during the day.
Radio host, yes. His quote, "We've got to get rid of the immigration issue altogether. If people are here, law-abiding, participating for years, their kids are born here, first secure the border, pathway to citizenship, then it's done. But you can't let the problem continue. It's got to stop."
And so he's not only has he turned on this, which, hey, great.
Yeah, absolutely. If it
allows
more...
He had to say it in a snotty way, saying he evolved.
Right.
Taking a smack at the president in terms of that of evolution and that man don't belong in the same sentence. First of all, he doesn't believe in it, and second of all, he doesn't do it.
It's interesting that this sudden about-face rippled through the GOP shortly after the election.
Cynicism.
Yes. I mean, this came just a day, 48 hours after racial minorities made up 28% of the electorate in 2012. That was up from 26% in 2008. So a big jump there when you're talking about 2% of everybody who voted throughout the country, and 80% of those minorities, 80% of those with, darker skin than Hannity's average follower, 80% of them voted for Obama.
But the thing is, I really think they're missing the point.
Of course they're missing the point. It's the same as, you brought this up. This was your point. It's the same as them trying to put Michael Steele in charge of the RNC. It's the same reason they constantly back Alan West. It's the same reason that they're now falling all over themselves for this new, came out of nowhere, Mia Love. I don't remember what state she's...
Utah or Colorado, something like that. She's a mayor.
I think Colorado.
Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
The thing is that
we got black people.
They're racists.
Of course they're
think that people vote based on race, and they don't. They will vote based on the policies and attitudes towards certain ethnic minorities, but not because of...
Right. To say that people voted for Obama just because they're black and he's black is insulting, not just to the president, but to the voters themselves. Exactly. And if you were to do the reverse and say the only reason white people voted for Romney was white, they get offended.
I'm not saying there aren't people out there, but whenever
of course there's extremes.
But whenever there's a situation where you say X people defined by X physical characteristics do Y for that reason, that's racism. I don't care which side it comes from or out of what, it's the policies, the values, and that's just so their solution is cynical and it's racist. Yeah, their solution is to suddenly care about minorities, to suddenly care about diversity, to suddenly care about immigration, as if all of those statements, all of those pieces of legislation, all of the candidates they've supported, like Mitt Romney, are adamantly opposed to these philosophies. Well, pass the DREAM Act, thank you very much, and we're still not going to vote for you. Exactly. Guess what? You should pass the DREAM Act because it's good policy. It's the right thing to do. Because children who were brought here for no other reason than, had no control in the matter should not be penalized. For survival purposes, to make a better life, which is what this country is supposed to be about. And guess what? If they've gone to school here, they're willing to serve in the military, they're willing to better themselves for the sake of our country. Do we want somebody with that dedication, with that education, with that mindset to just leave and take all that valuable, that valuable asset the country could have away? No, they should be welcomed and warmed and be invited to be part of this country. And that would be a reason to vote for the DREAM Act. Right. They're voting for the DREAM Act to have Hispanics vote for them in elections. And that's it, period. It's that blatantly cynical. Well, it'll be very interesting to see in 2014 and 2016, if they can repair the damage that they have done over the past decade. I hope that their attitudes change, not just that their voting changes, that their attitudes and that you welcome with open arms people of all kinds. You can't just have the token minority in your party or on your panel on TV and expect everybody to. It's the national or political equivalent of saying, I'm not racist because I have a black friend. There you go. And it's insulting. It's insulting to your viewers. It's insulting to the voters, and it's insulting to the elected officials that are minorities that worked hard to get where they are. And it has much more to do than just their skin color. It does. It's the policies. Even for God's sakes, Marco Rubio. Ugh. On a really, really bright note, more women in Congress. That's right. And there will be more. Yeah. And to 51, 52%. Then things will really start changing, I think. I believe so. I think so. I mean, they say that, corporations are ran better with the higher percentage of women in it. And I don't think that's a sexist thing. I think it's just a diversity thing. It's having more than one mindset. I say let's give it a shot because Congress ain't working so hot right now. That's true. We can elect space aliens if it gets Congress working better. I don't care. Leave Scientology. Marvin the Martian. I'm all for it. He's got my vote. I'm very angry. Yes, I'm very angry that Mitch McConnell won't raise taxes. Actually, he is Marvin the Martian, I think. No, he's Myrtle the Turtle. Yeah. Okay. So, anyhow, we've got lots of thank yous we want to get to before we have to wrap up the end of the show. Of course, thank you to Nicole Sandler, first and foremost, for always taking a big chance on us, radioornot.com, and all the other shows there. Jacob Dean, Skeptical Scott of Filter Free Radio, Kenny Pick, Tom Schaefer, Deb Cal, Matthew Emmer of Turn Up the Night, Nurse Talk, The More Me Show, DJ Downtown, and everybody over at We Act Radio, Alex Lawson, Kamone Freeman, Pete Callahan, Rich Webster, Daniel Marins, David Schuster,
and anybody I could be leaving out. Of course, big thanks to George Rodriguez and SoFlo Radio, who is seriously an asset. It's his stream we use to get to the air, so we appreciate it.
Yes. We have to be really nice to George because he can cut us. He can pull the plug in a second.
Extra hugs and bonus concern or whatever, insert sappiness here. George, you know I love you. And of course, thanks to Tom and Louise.
Very much.
Thanks to Shano for producing an amazing show.
And not doing his research on the Supreme Court before that segment.
Thanks for leaving me hanging. That was the Supreme Court cliff. Yes. And thanks to anybody who subscribes to the podcast over on YouTube, over on iTunes, or the show over on YouTube. You can, of course, get it for free. Thanks to our great guests, Allie and Joshua Holland. Please go and donate to Occupy Sandy or Occupy New York Relief. It's very important. And you can donate in more ways than just money. You know, time is very important right now. So, and of course, last but not least, thanks to you. You guys are the reason we do what we do and the reason we're here. We appreciate it so much. And we hope you have a great rest of Sunday. See you next week.